and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. It struck me this morning, March the 20th, state testing is just it's very close. That means we've almost accomplished another year. So I'm quite pleased that everybody's still working very, very hard. I know spring break is just around the corner. And when I was in that classroom, it's every day I'd go to school and say, oh, please help me to make it through up to spring break. So we are almost there. This morning we're going to deal with some, I call them essential academic issues, or not issues, but examination of how we do things based upon what's required by the state and based upon what we do as educators. So let's not waste any time, and we're going to jump into that. The only thing is I have two things that I'm required to read, so I'm going to do that now. All right, this meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified, and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. This meeting is open to the public, and the public is welcome to attend in person. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board Meetings, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. Vision. Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to reach their full potential. Our mission. Sumter School District is committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and a high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. And we do have some committee members who are virtual this morning. Good morning. It's good to have you. And so we're going to pay attention to when they need to speak. If you know it's your wife, you must bring her on. And if you will, just very quickly introduce yourselves. I'm the chair of this committee, and then very quickly introduce yourselves if you're a committee member or subcommittee member.
I'm Jeff Zell. I represent Area 8. I'm a committee member of the CIA.
Among others.
Among others.
Jerry Boozer, subcommittee.
No,
Or span subcommittee member.
thank you. And then we have two virtuals.
We have two subcommittee members virtual, Cherie Boozer of the CIA committee and Herbert Johnson of the Fine Arts Committee.
Thank you. All right, so are there any objections to the agenda? So if not, this meeting is now called to order, and there's no gavel, so. And I'm going to make opening remarks null and void because we need to jump into this. We have quite a bit of material. And the the agenda is approved. Our first 3.1, Office of Academics School Identifications.
Good morning. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Christine Carnes to come forward to share this information. She serves as the Elementary English Language Arts and Social Studies Coordinator, but she also serves in the capacity as the backup district testing coordinator. I feel in the Office of Academics it's very important to cross-train. In the event that someone isn't available, there's always someone to step in so that the work continues. Ms. Carnes?
Good morning. As Dr. McLeod said, I'm here this morning to share with you some information about the school improvement programs, and I'm also going to cover some changes to the accountability system for 2024. Okay.
Do I need to move? Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Okay, I need to slide over. It's just so everybody can see that.
There we go. Okay, so as we all know, as part of our South Carolina ESSA plan, we have school improvement programs. Sorry, just threw me off. Each school receives a designation on their report card, and a designation for the accountability indicators on that report card. And then based on that index they receive, meeting certain criteria, they are assigned a school improvement designation. So I'm going to walk us through each of those designations and then look at the schools in Sumter School District that have been assigned those designations, as well as the exit criteria. Okay. So we have three programs that are on a 3-year identification cycle. First, we have priority schools. Priority schools are any school that is performing in the bottom 10% of their grade span, and that's for elementary, middle, and high. These schools receive technical assistant funds as well as support from the Office of School Transformation. So when schools are ranked according to their overall index to determine that bottom 10%, before schools are designated as priority, the bottom 5% of schools who are Title I are pulled out of that group, and they are identified as what is called comprehensive support and improvement schools. We refer to them as CSI. So those are Title I schools in the bottom 5%, again, of their grade span, either elementary, middle, or high. Okay. A Title I or a non-Title I high school can also be identified as CSI if their graduation rate is lower than 70%. Okay. These schools also receive technical assistance funds, and they also have a state transformation coach assigned to their school to provide extra support. Okay. So both of these are based off of the overall index of the report card. We have the additional technical support and improvement schools. These are also Title I schools scoring in the bottom 5th percentile, but this category looks at subgroup performance. So it's not the entire school, it's just the certain subgroups. Okay. When a school has been identified as ATSI for 2 consecutive cycles and the subgroup's performance does not improve, that school then becomes a CSI school. All right, so looking a little deeper at our priority schools, again, this is a 3-year cycle. So in 2022, Cherryville Elementary, Willow Drive Elementary, Bates Middle, and Chestnut Oaks Middle were identified as priority schools. Priority schools will be identified again in the fall of 2025, and in order for these 4 schools to not be identified as priority again, they must no longer be ranked in the bottom 10th percentile of all schools of their grade span. And then when we look deeper at the CSI schools, I separated these by elementary and high. We do not have a middle school that has been identified as CSI, but their criteria is much like the elementaries. So right now we have 2 CSI schools, Pacala Springs Elementary and R.E. Davis. That's for their elementary school. So in order for these schools to exit CSI in fall of 2025, they must have a rating of good or excellent on the student progress section or indicator of the report card, plus have an overall report card score that is above that initial target score of 30.79. So in 2022, when they identified the CSI schools, they identified the highest performing CSI school for every area or grade span, and that made the target score. So that's where the 30.79 comes from. That is the highest scoring CSI school in 2022. So that's the target to beat, essentially, to get off of the list. We have a high school, Lakewood High School, that is a CSI school. In order for Lakewood High School to be removed from that list or not re-identified, they need to have a 3% increase in their college and career readiness indicator, and either one of the following: an overall score that is above that initial target, and for high school that is 15.4, or a graduation rate higher of 70%. And so that's CSI, and again, those will be identified again in fall of 2025. And so our last 3-year cycle, again, is ATSI. It too has some slightly different exit criteria depending on if you're elementary, middle, or high school. All going back to that CSI target that I talked about on the last slide. So for our elementary and middle schools, the identified subgroup must move above the target school's performance in both academic achievement and student progress. And for high school, it's the same thing, but it's academic achievement and college and career readiness. And so as you can see in the other box, we have a few ATSI schools, again, that were identified in 2022, all of which the subgroup identified are the disabled students. So we have Alice Drive Elementary, High Hills, Kingsbury, and Wilder. Crestwood is in their second cycle of not exited. And what that means is Crestwood, as you see over here where I said that they have to meet that target score for academic achievement and college and career readiness, they did not exit because they met the target for academic achievement, but not college and career readiness. So they did not meet all the criteria to exit. Manchester and Sumter High are ATSI second cycle re-identified because they met that criteria to be identified again at the end of their first cycle. So that's the difference between not exited and re-identified. Okay. All right, excuse me. And we also have 2 other programs where the schools are identified on an annual basis. The technical support and improvement, that is also dealing with subgroups, and this is in the bottom 10th percentile. Just for clarification, ATSI is the bottom 5th percentile, and TSI is the bottom 10th, again, for that grade span. Schools that are identified on this list for 3 years in a row are then identified as consistently underperforming schools. We just received designations for this earlier this month. I'm not sure what just happened. Sure, keep going.
We wanted you to take a break. So we could write all this down.
Am I talking too fast? I tend to talk fast, sorry. Okay, so technical support and improvement, consistently underperforming schools, they are identified because in 2017, 2018, 2018-19, 21-22, those subgroups were identified as performing in the bottom 10%. So for 3 years straight, High Hills, Furman, and Sumter High were then named as consistently underperforming schools earlier this month. Okay. And then the final one is our underperforming schools. This is any school that scores below average or unsatisfactory for their overall report card rating. And then much like TSI, if schools fall in the category of unsatisfactory for 3 years in a row, they will be named as chronically underperforming. And those will be named sometime next year because, as you can see, they plan to use data from 21-22, 22-23, and then 23-24. So we have the list from 21-22 and 22-23, as you can see on the screen there. are schools that scored below average or unsatisfactory in 21-22, and then 22-23. You can see in the below average category, we had several schools move out of that category, as well as in unsatisfactory. So Bates moved up from unsatisfactory to below average. Willow Drive moved from unsatisfactory in 21-22 to average in 22-23, so they are no longer on the underperforming schools list. And then Chestnut Oaks, Pacala, Springs, Lamira, and High Hills all moved from below average in 21-22 to average in 22-23. So again, they are also no longer on the underperforming schools list. So that is a, I know, albeit quick, overview of the different school improvement programs and the designations for Sumter School District. I'm going to move into talking about the summary of accountability changes for 2024, and then we can do questions at the end. Okay. All right. So as many of you know, the accountability manual and how we determine ratings for report cards is changing for the 2024 report card. And since, as you mentioned, we're entering testing season, we wanted to make sure everyone was aware of these changes. And also, there have actually been some more changes just recently due to some feedback from the United States Department of Education on plan changes they would like us to make to our ESSER plan. So I'm going to review those as well. Okay. So some of the changes I'm going to talk about are academic achievement, how that indicator is rated for high schools. There is also a new indicator for high schools called the High School Student Success Indicator, and that indicator is worth 12 points, and what they did was they essentially took 6 points from the graduation rate and college and career readiness to make those 12 points. So that's a change in total points for those ratings. Okay. And then what we feel is probably one of the biggest changes to the accountability system is the growth model that is used to determine student progress at the elementary and middle level. So I'll talk about that as well. Okay. So just briefly, the high school student success measure, that is made up of 2 scores. Basically, it is the on track to graduate measure. And so what that looks at is first year, second year, and third year on track for students. And the way they determine a student is on track is that they attain 6 credits per year. And out of those 6, 1 must be in English and 1 must be in math. Okay. And then the second measure under that indicator is the 5-year student success measure. And that is basically the proportion of students achieving high school success. And they consider high school success to be earning a regular diploma, GED, or employability credentials within 5 years. Okay. And that will also include students from the previous grad year rate, and in this case, this school year, it would be 9GR 20. Okay. And I didn't mention on this current report card, or the report card we're going to get for 2024, it will only include first year on track to graduate for your 9GR 24s. Since this is the first year, it will be reported like this. Okay. Another big change for high schools is in the academic achievement indicator. It will look at, they're moving to what they call in-year reporting. So in the past, the scores included in this indicator were from the graduating cohort, meaning many of those scores were 5 to 6 years old and often came from other places. They did not come from Sumter School District. Now what's going to happen is that indicator will include in-year reporting. So any student who took an EOC exam in the school year of 2023-24 as well as any middle school student who's in their first year of high school that took that EOC in middle school as an 8th grader. That score will move up to high school with them and then be counted as accountability for that high school. Okay. Another change is with the climate survey at the high school level. 12th graders will continue to be invited and encouraged to complete the climate survey. However, their responses will not be used to calculate that rating. Schools and districts will receive their responses, but they will not be added to that rating calculation. Okay. Another change is with our ML students. If an ML student has achieved proficiency and is no longer assessed with the access assessment, they will not be included in our ML progress calculations moving forward.
Would you have an acronym?
Oh, yes. Yes. MLP would be Multilingual Learners Progress. So are they progressing and growing is how that one's calculated. But they will be in that subgroup for 4 years. Okay. All right. So that's kind of a summary of, and a lot of those do deal with the high school. The ML would be for every level. Okay. So as I mentioned before, one of the big changes is with the growth model that is used to measure student progress. And as I've explained this to several groups over this year, I feel that it's important to give everybody an idea of where we're coming from. How has our state measured student progress over time? So when we originally started with report cards, we used criterion referenced value tables. And essentially that was students were given points when they changed achievement levels. So it was designed to encourage moving students up a level. So you have a student that does not meet, move them to meet, you get some points. So the idea is moving them up a level. So what happened was this, while it was, very easy to understand, move them a level, what this caused was a promotion of focusing on what we called the bubble kids. And those were the kids that were on that border of moving up a level. So it essentially promoted a focus on those because they were easier to move. After noticing that, the EOC moved to norm reference value added models, and we've actually had 2 versions of that. We started with one that looked at the student's individual score history and calculated what their next score should be based on their individual history. Currently, we use a model that bases growth on what is expected when a student is compared to other students who are like them. So the value of this is that it encouraged promoting growth for all students, not just a certain group. The issues came in when it was discovered that this is very unpredictable, meaning at the school and district level, we don't know what growth is expected from our students and how we're going to be compared to others. So it creates this, what they refer to as a black box, where you don't know what your target is or what your goal is, and then you can't link that to any practices to improve student achievement. So that's why they started doing some research, and they have moved to an added value growth model. And the way this model works is growth is assigned using 2 different types of targets based off of growth percentiles. So all students in grades 4 through 8 are given 2 individual growth targets based off of their historical scores and growth norms. So every single student in grades 4 through 8 is going to get a median annual target, MAT, and that is going to be set at the 50th percentile for growth. They're also going to get an added value target that is going to be set in some cases a little higher, and in some cases a lot higher. But that is meant to reflect those progressive learning gains to move students toward proficiency. So it's not just about moving them to the next level, but ultimately getting them to proficiency, which would be meets expectation. And when a student meets their MAT, their median annual target, they will be awarded 1 point. And then, they will be awarded 1 point. If they meet their AVT, the added value target, that is worth more points to go towards the school's rating. So that's one way that they are going to measure growth, is whether students are meeting their MAT or the AVT. Okay. Students will also, schools, will also receive a score or a rating based off of the percent of students that met the AVT. So if a large proportion of your students meet the AVT, it's possible to receive a favorable rating on student progress. Okay? So you're earning points, and then you're looking at who met the AVT. And I'm going to get into that a little more at the end. I'm going to show you the calculations, because that is something else that has changed. But I wanted to show you here how AVTs are determined. I mentioned they use growth percentiles. And then they divided the students into their prior achievement bands, and we're familiar with those bands. That's the does not meet, the approaches, the meet, and the exceeds. So based off of their prior achievement, students are assigned an AVT on a growth percentile. So if a student was exceeds in 3rd grade, as a 4th grader, they're given an AVT set at the 55th growth percentile. If a student was meets, it's at the 60th. And then what they did with does not meets and approaches is they split that band in half for 65, 70, 75, and 80. So what happens is our lowest prior achieving students are set at the 80th growth percentile. It's a very rigorous goal, but they have further to go to get to proficiency. And so that's kind of the idea behind all of this, is set these higher goals to get these students to proficiency by 8th grade. Okay? And so I have a visual that I think will help show you how these added value targets are applied. So we have here a group of students, the added value family, and they're all in 3rd grade. Okay, we have their ELA and their math scores. So this is what they scored in 3rd grade. You can see where they were assigned a prior achievement band. The prior achievement band of 1 being the lowest, does not meet. Prior achievement band 6 being the highest, exceeds. So when we apply an AVT to these students at that growth percentile assigned for their prior achievement band, and then the student meets that AVT, you can see how their scores change in grade 4 for ELA and math. Alex is now in prior achievement band 2. Ava has moved up. Aiden has moved up. So they're making progress towards that meets band, prior achievement 5. Again, in 5th grade, we apply that AVT. They meet that AVT, which is, of course, the goal. And we continue to do that through elementary and middle school, applying an AVT, helping the students meet that AVT, until ultimately when they are in 8th grade, now Alex in ELA is meeting expectations, whereas in 3rd grade, he was at the lowest prior achievement band. So one of the reasons behind this is because what we know about growth is that when students grow at the 50th percentile or below, it has little to no impact on their achievement. So when students are meeting that median target of 50th percentile, their achievement is essentially staying where it was. And ultimately, the idea behind growth is to see an improvement in achievement. And that's why the EOC decided that we needed to set more rigorous goals for our students if the ultimate goal is meeting proficiency. Oh, I'm sorry, the Education Oversight Committee. Sorry. Well, simplest way for me to say that is they tell us what we have to do with accountability. Okay, so last thing I wanted to share with you was the calculating of student progress, because this is, again, a change from the way we've done it in the past, but also there has been yet another change just in the last month. I know Dr. McLeod has mentioned to y'all several times that this accountability manual tends to change very often, and with all of these changes, it continues to change throughout the year. So I'm not sure if we'll have more changes before they come out in the fall. But so originally, the original plan for calculating student progress, as I mentioned, students get points when they meet those targets. So if you meet your MAT, that's that median target, students will receive a point. If they meet that AVT, as you can see on the screen, how I've circled, they get extra points, with that lowest prior achieving band getting 13 points. And that is added to the point that they get for meeting their MAT. They've also decided to give partial points, so if a student falls anywhere between their MAT and their AVT, they will be given those partial points listed there. Okay? And then remember I mentioned that they also get a score for the percent of students meeting AVT. So the way they intended on calculating this was using the best of rule. If a school earned more points using this table, then that is how their rating would be calculated. If a school earned more points based off of the percent of their students meeting AVTs, then that is the score that would be used for their rating. Okay. However, the U.S. Department of Education said that using this best of rule was applying different standards to different schools. They asked that we use the same measure and apply it to all schools in the same way. So then the question became which measure and how to apply it. So they went through all the ways of measuring it that I explained earlier, and decided that the criterion reference value tables was not something they wanted to go back to. So they took those off of the table. And then decided that the value in norm reference tables was, models, not tables, the value added models, was because it's not very sensitive to changes in tests. So essentially, if kids take the same test this year, take the same test next year, they're able to predict growth, and it's not as susceptible to outside factors not related to the test. And in any given year, they can always identify what is average growth and determine what is better than average, what is worse than average. So they wanted to use that one. The rating points used for meeting student targets, they recognize that it is more rigorous with additional points, and it promotes as many students as possible meeting those targets. So they like the idea of promoting growth behind those ratings. So it has been determined that they will use all three, and our student progress indicator will be a weighted average of these three. So that is the most recent change.
And let me try to make this as simple as I understand it. And you have some, made-up names here, so I will use those names. Those kids, all of this data that we've been talking about is determined and calculated by South Carolina Ready,
Yes, ma'am. And at the high school, the EOCEP,
EOC, South Carolina Pass.
no,
Not the science,
no.
not the science and social studies, only reading and math. So this little test that these children are about to take, everything up here is calculated based upon that little child walking into the room and taking that test. Not what Ms. Smith has taught all year and the good things she's seen and the progress she's seen. It's measured by this test. And whether that child feels like a cold is coming on, hadn't had any sleep last night because there was a ruckus outside, that's not even relevant, is it?
No, ma'am.
Because these numbers and everything up here is determined by that test for those children, 3rd through 8th, and then EOC, in some cases, sophomores. I don't know what to say. And EOC was developed as an oversight committee.
Yes.
Many of the people are politically appointed, and yet we do have many consequences based upon that. And the State Board of Education, I thought it was doing a very fine, I'm not the State Board of Education, that, plus our State Board of Education, I thought they were doing a fine job before we had the EOC. Nonetheless, it is what it is. And so, what does the teacher do? Oh, and one other point, maybe you can clarify for me. All of this data is somehow collected. Is some of the data done by a local person in our school district? Or is all of the data calculated by somebody at the State Department of Education? It seems like some of it has to be done by counselors.
For the report card?
Yes,
Yeah, there is data that we, send to the State Department, but most of it now, they are actually set up to come into our systems and take what they need, and then all the calculations are done. There's a phase in there where we get to review the data before it's finalized, but yes,
But it's inputted by some people here, right? Isn't there some data inputted
It's going to
by-
be, it's calculated by the State Department. However, we review the graduation cohort. We ensure that they have met either the college or career readiness. That is not directly associated with earning the diploma. However, it is a requirement by the state that the school district ensure that they are college and are career ready. But ensuring that the students are taking the correct courses in the correct order, that is the responsibility of the high schools to do that. The leadership as well as the counseling department, along with the teachers' input on that.
So that's not a perfect system, is it? People make mistakes. But if there's a mistake made, we get dinged.
That's correct. That's correct. So we've put systems in place to be meeting with the high schools at least monthly to review transcripts, to audit them repeatedly so that multiple eyes are on them, to be able to catch any of the mistakes and make the corrections. We're at this time using a tracking system where it has all of that information in one place. So as the counselors and the leadership at the schools are working with the students, they can see where they're at all in one place instead of having to pull from multiple places. Everything from how they're progressing in their current courses, what they need next to be a completer for CTE, what they need next to make sure that they stay on track for these new indicators. And also because that's what's best for students.
Yeah, and that's in addition to all the other hats we wear. All right. Now, I guess my question is, and Dr. Wright, do we have enough people who can work with that data? Are we, you know what I'm saying? When it's easy to make a mistake when you're tired, when you have another report due, you have curriculum instruction assessment report to give. Do you think we have enough people having to do those critical data calculations?
So, Madam Vice Chair, Mrs. Disney, anytime you ask the superintendent, do you have enough people, I'm going to say no. The challenge with data assessment and making sure that data is properly done and all of that is that the game changes so frequently. The problem here in South Carolina is for years and years and years, and I'm speaking of from someone that was here as superintendent in 2013, 2015, then left and came back. The game is changing so fast and so frequently in terms of just how data is secured and evaluated and so forth until even with a multiplicity of people, it is at best confusing. And here's just one example. Until now, and I would argue maybe even now, current report cards will show data that could be sometimes 2 and 3 years old. So you can't really accurately assess if schools are improving in real time because the data has a combination of this year's data and data from 2 or 3 years ago. And we're not talking about graduation cohort rates, which would make sense. That is data that would maybe work over a couple of years. But day-to-day information. And then, as you said, I'll try to say it a little bit differently, but kind of along the same lines. As of 1998, I just pulled up the EOC's write-up about what they do because I wanted to remember the language. But basically, we have 2 entities that we answer to, but one of those 2 is a support mechanism and the other is basically just I hate to trivialize it this way, but a seek and find organization. And so that creates difficulties too because depending on the landscape, I'll say it that way, it's difficult to determine who we're really supposed to answer to in terms of getting achievement improved. So the answer to your original question is yes, we could use more people, but the bigger picture is there needs to be clarity and consistency on how data is determined. I mean, because that's really if you ask many of us, how do you determine and discover targets moving forward? If we're honest, most of us are going to have to say, I need more information before I can make that determination. It is unclear because the formula has changed and the smartest person, the person that created the new formula agreements, I think worked for the EOC and might be helping out SCD. Now anyway, there's a bit of fluidity, I guess would be the word, even in the interpretation of the formulas that have been created. And it's hard to come up with a game plan if you're not clear on how the formula is created. And they themselves admit that formulas changed. or changing. You just said that something has changed very recently.
Yes, that's why I wanted to point out this last
Right.
one on the last slide, is because the way they originally created the new added value growth model using the MAT and AVT targets, it was actually going to let us know exactly what a student needed to do that year to meet that target. We knew that target from day one. But now they've added in the norm reference value added models that we can't calculate. So now we know a little portion of it, but there's still that area that we don't know what it is, how it's actually going to be calculated, whether we met the goal or not until it's all over.
So in order really for leaders, school leaders, district office leaders to know how to target children's growth, you got to be clear on what the formula expects. And that's the challenge. So again, yes, we need more people, but there also has to be at some point clarity and transparency, I guess be the best way to say it, on the way this stuff, the student achievement data is calculated and presented. I know I said a lot, but
And then, if you don't mind
I
if
wanna
I
make
add
sure.
also
Yes.
consistency, if we could keep
That's
the
right.
same, the same system for, more than a couple years. Once we figure it out, then something changes. So that adds to it as well.
And the other thing that I think is confusing to most of us, I can name a few schools, or I can name a school that received an excellent, but is on the CSI list because of a subgroup. And to the public, they don't know which subgroup it is. I mean, I don't know. What bottom line is, what can we do to help teachers, I guess, do better on the South Carolina Ready? Because that's how it's measured.
Well, currently,
And EOC.
one of the things we're doing for elementary and middle is making a connection to our interim assessment, MAP growth. Because these growth percentiles, this research was not, the EOC didn't make this up. It's been out there, and actually it's the research that MAP growth uses to assign students growth targets. And so now we can take the state's AVT and apply that to a student's MAP growth target, and it kind of gives us a better idea. So essentially, if they're saying this student needs to grow at the 80th percentile, then we can apply that to our interim assessment and monitor that data throughout the year and know, is that student growing at the rate that the state is asking, and then dig into those reports and see what skills and concepts they need to build on
Okay, are
in
you
order
talking-
to improve.
Are you talking about the MAP? I was around in 2000 when we used MAP.
Yes.
Are they keeping up with what data needs to be shown when these kids are taking it?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, NWEA MAP growth is, as I mentioned, this research came from them, actually, that they've been using for many years, and the
Okay.
EOC is now applying that.
Okay.
And they really stay on top of what's going on and make adjustments as needed, and then provide us support in applying those changes in our everyday data analysis.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a global question now. I know South Carolina, sometimes we receive, people looking down upon us. How, do other states have an equivalent to an EOC that's making up all of these rules and ways to interpret the data?
most of them have some form of end of course test. It may not be called an EOC.
But the
But yes,
EOC
ma'am.
body,
Yes,
When
yes.
you were in North
Oh,
Carolina-
no, that's what you mean. Okay, not the test, you mean, no.
the EOC body.
No,
And-
I don't know of another state in the union. There might be one that has two monitoring agencies, like State Department of Education in this case, and then another. But no, ma'am.
So if we had the rules of, let's say, Tennessee,
That's
our
correct.
scores might look completely different.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's correct. If I can kind of answer the question as well that you asked, just a little bit. What help can we provide? One of the biggest challenges that we have is we've got principals here today that are going to present. Somehow or another, the EOC, State Department, whomever, needs to understand that if we really expect leaders to go into their schools and have an opportunity to grow students and help them get better, there has to be clarity and consistency. And somebody needs to get to the people that are creating these things to just lay it out plainly. This is how you measure how a kid is doing at the beginning of the year. This is how you measure how a kid is doing at the end of the year, and evaluate the difference. And you can grade me on that all day. When you add all of these things to student achievement, that's where we get in trouble, because we can do formative assessments and measure progress along the year, but it's a convoluted formula to get the information that we need. And somebody simply needs to, it's kind of like the way we teach math now. At some point we got to go back to the basics, even when it comes to data assessment and achievement. Until we get to that point, it's going to be difficult because the target is not only is it moving, it's also invasive. It is unclear on how to teach people to grow because of the complexity of the formulas that are used. That's about the easiest way I can say it.
Are there any questions?
Madam Chairwoman, I have just more of a statement than anything. I agree with you, Dr. Wright. I believe that I don't think I've been this irritated. All due respect, it's not your presentation, but it's convoluted is exactly what the layman is going to see. So we have to essentially hire what I see as high-powered academics to understand just how to measure academic success or failure. I fully agree with you on that, sir. As we were talking, I pulled up a couple schools. I understand I've done a lot of research, and I'm going to sort of go out on a little limb here, but I pulled up Crosswell Drive. We have tons of subgroups in which affect, sort of the outcome. They're elements to how we determine success and achievement. That said, we all are keenly aware we have a lot of poverty in the area and in the Midlands, and so there is sort of there's absolutely a socioeconomic factor to be considered here. And a little side note is one thing is I don't know if we're ever going to be able to put the onus on the schools to educate children who their families have no interest in their education. So that's the big hill to climb, but I'm just being completely frank on that. I'm sorry if I hurt any feelings. That said, though, is I'm looking at various schools. I pulled up Ari Davis, I pulled up Crosswell Drive and Alice Drive, and what I'm noticing is, and again, what I'm seeing is the academic output and achievement results with the cost per student. And I know it's a very grossly simplistic way of looking at things, and so please forgive me for that. But this is what laymen see. They're not seeing the R squared of how in the exponentials to carry over on how to see if a third grader can read at level, right? Which that's the irritating part to me. So that said, what can we do internally? And I know we're talking about people and dollars and resources and things like that, but what can we do internally to gauge where these children are at? I mean, it doesn't take a formula like this to understand where a child is reading at third grade level. That's easy. That's a simple assessment, correct? Am I wrong? So I don't know. This is more of just a complaint on my part. It's not at you. It's just at the whole system. I don't know how you navigate this and get to the result that we want, and that is educated children, when we have to essentially hire what it appears to me, six-figure salary folks to just make sure that this one program is being implemented correctly. So what can we do? What tree can we shake and yell at?
Well, I do want to mention one more time that we do have MAP growth. It's a very valuable interim assessment that we are required to give by the state, but again, it does provide very valuable information. And they have a linking study to our SC Ready assessment that will project, so each season that we give that test, it will say if this student takes SC Ready in the spring, they're likely to score, does not meets.
So it's projection.
Yes, and it's pretty valid right on. I've used it for many years at the school level with 90 to 95% accuracy.
Well, I think, if I may cut you off just real quick, I think that may be something that we, as a committee and a board, should look at. What processes we know, what, programs or what processes we know are currently available and are being utilized that aren't telling us the whole story. Because, as we know, a lot of folks that are coming into the district or leaving the district, they're looking at essentially, I believe, two pieces of information, one of them being the report card. But if that report card doesn't tell us exactly what, really where we're at, then how do we do a better job or at all in communicating that to potential students and families coming in? That's the big question, I guess. And I don't know if I have a question in there unless you have an answer.
Okay. Well, I would love an opportunity to share with y'all with MAP growth, everything that it will do and the data that we get from that assessment and how that can be applied in the school level to support students.
But that may be the day that little Rebecca felt really good.
Yeah.
And she may have been, getting COVID. Her grandma was on the deathbed on the real test day.
Yes, ma'am.
And that variable is not being measured.
Well, now, I will add that we have a retest policy where schools can contact myself or Melissa Boyce, and it's for situations like
But
that.
Rebecca may not tell the teacher.
Yeah, well, that's true. That is true. That is true. But we
She's
are
gonna
aware those
trudge
kinds of
through
things
this thing.
happen, so
Yeah.
we want schools to know that,
But I'm
if
just
little
saying,
Johnny comes in.
there are variables that
Yes.
are not within the realm of
Yes.
testing.
Yep, definitely.
Now, I'm not making excuses. There may be a rotten teacher in that room. But, and that's our job, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, just quickly, if I may follow up just one, can you just sort of very quickly walk me through the process of the retesting?
Well, it's basically just a form that a MAP coordinator at a school would fill out and say that they would like to retest a student.
Okay.
And then they give us the reasons. It could be,
Sure.
little Johnny's
Sickness.
running a fever
Sure.
and,
Okay. Does that
didn't
happen
know.
often? I mean, it sounds like a good tool available, like we should be utilizing
Yeah.
it as much as we can to ensure that we're getting accurate.
I
assessment.
couldn't tell you how many we have in each season, but we definitely
Okay.
have some.
So, and our principals and administrators are very aware and
Yes,
open to
that's-
utilize that process?
Yes, that's part of
without-
our MAP coordinator
Okay.
training every year is that
It's not
process.
jumping through hoops is what I'm asking.
Oh, no, it's
Okay.
just a very simple form. One of the two of us go through it, and then we contact them and we reset it and
All right,
and
thank you
let
very
them.
much.
Because we want that data to be as reliable and valid as possible.
And I just want to make another public, I just want to make sure it's correct, and if it's correct, please, let's make this public. Every child is tested.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
That means there's a wide range of abilities.
Yes.
Same test, right? For the most part, it's the same test. Unless we're dealing with something very unusual.
Yes,
For our interim assessments, the state requires that each school has 95 percentile participation.
Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do, on that specific point. Thank you for bringing that up. I guess to Dr. Wright or Dr. McLeod, or anybody who is expert in this area, my question is, if obviously it's a weighted system, right? You may have, and we do have high performers, and we have not so high performers. That's a nice way of putting it, right? And that draws down the average. And so, and that could be happening in individual schools where you have, maybe several grades in a particular elementary school is really sort of pulling down the average assessment or the average grade percentage. How do we, and can we, I guess, partition that information to say we know what schools, obviously we know what schools are, according to the State Department's assessment and grading, which ones are performing well and which ones aren't, but do we have anything internally that would tell us where to micro-focus in the localities, if that makes sense? Like, is R.A. Davis, for example, they have a sort of a challenge being a middle and an elementary. That being said, what if it's just, and this is just a thought exercise, what if it's just two grades that are really suffering and the rest are sort of doing fine? How do we as a district in a body look at where the true problem exists? And do we do that? That's my question.
The short answer is yes, we do that constantly. One of the beauties of the principalship is that principals evaluate that kind of information all the time, and they make adjustments based on strengths. A person might be really adept at teaching fourth grade language arts, and so principals are typically given that flexibility to be able to do that. Also, from our level, our academic folks look at data and crunch numbers all the time and try to make suggestions in terms of supports. We try to have people focus on, instructional improvements, be it through curriculum coaches or what have you. But another big factor for us historically has been, and I'm going back to this again, Mr. Zell, on purpose. We had 122 teaching vacancies July 1st of 22. We're down to inside 60, depends on what number you look on which day. We've got some turnover for next school year, things of that nature. The point is, that's going to continue to be the challenge. We love our subs, we love our long-term subs, we love people that are in the pipeline trying to get certified. But classrooms are going to perform better when you have capable, qualified teachers in every classroom. They're not going to perform as well when the facilitator of learning is a work in progress, whatever that is. And I used to be a work in progress myself, so I certainly can't say that that doesn't ever happen. But that is not an excuse, but an explanation to why we're where we are. But the answer is yes. We look at those things all the time and try to make adjustments, and principals are faced with those tasks every day, looking at, my fourth grade language arts scores weren't as good as I need them to be. How do I make adjustments? And quite honestly, those decisions happen from year to year, but they can also happen within the year, depending on, for lack of a better thought right now, somebody might be expected, or somebody might get deployed. How does that affect? So those decisions are not only year to year, but they can be within the year to try to make sure the learning is maintained, and the cupboard is certainly not overflowing with options. So, yes, sir.
Did I understand you to ask the question, are all children tested?
I did.
And you said 95%.
The requirement for the interim assessment is that they have to have a minimum of 95% participation in the interim assessments. They also have to have 95% participation or above in the SE Ready, the EOCs, those types of things. Now, some of these assessments, we do have students with disabilities that they do receive their accommodations during testing.
Any more questions? And we will move on.
At this time, excuse me, we have our 3 schools that are coming in for their quarter update, and I think you will see them in practice actually using some of the interim data to make adjustments within this school year. This month, we will start with our high school, Lakewood High School, and Dr. Wright and Ms. Henry Hand, if you'll come forward.
There are 3 rights in the system.
Good morning, everyone.
No wrongs, just rights.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We bring you greetings from the swamp. And we're on a lighter note. We want to present, can you hear me good? I'm always muffled.
Is that on?
It's on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll speak in and then I'll pass it to you. It's in your hand when it's your turn. So we were asked to come before you and present a 45-day update from the last time we met with you to share our goals with you. And so we're very excited to share a 45-day update with you this morning. We can go to the next slide, Ms. Scott. So the 3 goals, Ms. Henry Hand will begin the presentation with our 3 goals, the three areas that we said we wanted to show improvements in, which was our ELC scores, our college and career readiness, and our grad rate. And so she will begin the updates as it pertains to those 3 areas, and then those 2 areas, and then I will bring the last portion of it home for us.
So our EOC scores, the data will show you in comparison of the school report card from the 2023 last year. Go back. So the 4 areas included on the EOC is Algebra 1, English 1, Biology, and U.S. History. And with these scores, they only count on the school report card for a grade of C or higher. And even though we have students that may have had a D, which is still passing for the grade, it's not counted in the report card data. And so now in our last assessment, our last administration in December, we had 7.8% for the Algebra 1, which was a 2% increase from the actual report card data from the 2023, 41.7 for that should have been English 2. And that's a 4.2% increase. Our biology is 16.6%, which is a very slight decrease, not even a full percentage of a decrease. And the U.S. history was 32%, which also showed an increase of 8.8%. And we can say that to the U.S. history, there were only 2 teachers in that subject area that taught those students, and one of them being a first-year teacher. And both of those scores, based on the veteran teacher and the first-year teacher, were very compatible. As well as the biology. There were 2 veteran teachers, but their scores were very similar. And English 2 were 3 teachers, and Algebra 1 was 2 teachers as well. So there was an increase for the majority of our scores for the EOC and the winter assessment. Next. For the college and career ready, we've shown significant gains here as well. So the report card points come with students being college or career ready. You don't have to be both, so this is just a breakdown. And being college ready, only showing a significant gain in the college or career ready, either or, which at 15.4%. And overall, the entire college and/or career-ready component from 2023 data went from 30 to 45% as of now. So right now we have shown a significant increase. We do have other opportunities coming forward in the semester for our WIN assessment, which will another opportunity to get students credentialized in the career assessment. So that number should show some increase. So we do still have a couple of students in the senior class that still would be looking forward to get credentialized in the career assessment. So that 45% should increase. And so our last area is the grad rate, in which this is going to be a determination as to one of the indicators that will pull us off of the identification for the CSI.
And so, again, we have here the report card data from 2023, where we were at a 67.7%. And so as of right now, through our monitoring, progress monitoring, our tracking system, we're on target right now for 79%. So we're showing 11.3% increase with our on-time graduation rate. And so we contribute that to, Dr. McLeod was talking about a tracker earlier. I was like, you're gonna steal our thunder. But we have been very intentional about what we're doing at Lakewood with our monitoring, with our tracking of our students. We have a pulse on them. We know who they are. We know who we cannot find. And after every effort we can think of, we know who they are that we can't find. We know, and so we've been doing a very, very good job meeting at least every other week. And these students are coming before us. And we can say what classes, how they're doing in their classes, like Dr. McLeod mentioned earlier. You know, what they need. Do they need seat time? Do they need recovery time? And so we contribute all of that, 79%, to all of the staff at Lakewood being very intentional about moving our students forward. At the very last presentation, we talked about how we, as a faculty, where we go back to the vision statement, because we wanted to say, we said last time how we, as a faculty and a community, we rewrote our vision statement. And we said we wanted to make it look to apply to what we were doing. And so here we are again, talking about in partnership with all stakeholders. Lakewood High School is committed to building positive relationships while creating a safe learning environment. We strive to implement through thorough instruction to reflect mastery and increase scores while introducing career and college pathways for students to rigorously pursue. And I think with the data that we just presented to you, we feel that we are moving in the right direction. If I can steal that slogan, we're moving in the right direction, not the right.
You can have it. Yes, ma'am.
Are you finding students are buying into that? Do you find that the atmosphere,
Well, I'll say this. Since we're back to requiring that students meet the number of seat hours in their classrooms and being in school, and we're monitoring attendance, we're seeing attendance is getting better, and we see kids are having conversations about, they want to know, how many days have I missed? You know, do I need to do seat time? So it's a conversation. So I think it's a movement in the right direction, where kids know now that school is a place for learning. And so we anticipate that things are going to continue to get better.
Anybody have questions?
Just want to point out that our, what's Dr. Harriet's title? What's her?
Coordinated School Council and MTSS.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Coordinator of School Council and the MTSS, Dr. Harriet, has helped us identify this tracking issue and been very instrumental in getting that going, and that's been a great help. So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to, because you all helped us get that position in place and so forth, so just wanted to point out that that's been very instrumental in identifying some work that then our high schools were able to do. So I think we'll see some improved data, hopefully, all the way across the board. And of course, in addition to the academic work that, you know, children have to be in school and be accounted for in order for us to move forward. So I just wanted to bring that point.
I think it sounds like a super mama. She wants to know where
That-
Charlie
that-
is.
There you go. Amen.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question, if that's okay. This is more of a I mean, it's the same questions I asked last time. First, good job, really. Double digits improvement is something that everybody wants to see. Hopefully, we can continue to see this year over year. Whatever it is you're all doing, keep doing it, and let us know how we can help, right? Amplify those gains. That said, though, these are specific questions I'm gonna ask everybody who presents today. It's a very simple question. Are we seeing bus improvement? Are we seeing on-time improvements? Is that helping or hurting? Code of conduct, I'm gonna keep asking about that simply because it's sort of what helps create the climate and the environment, professional environment within the confines of the walls of the school. And, well, actually, you know what? We'll keep to that. Buses and code of conduct, are they helping? What can we do?
Those are easy. So I would say, and I'm sure Ms. Henderhand would agree, I would say yes, we've seen improvements with the bus. Despite that outlier from last week or whenever it was, we're seeing a tremendous improvement where buses are arriving on time and buses are, leaving. As a matter of fact, I looked at the list just this week, and by 4:30, and most days sooner, all kids are gone off campus.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
So that's a big improvement. And by 9 in the morning, most kids are on, the majority of our students are there, compared to before, it would be 10 or 10:15,
What time does school start?
8:45. So, but the majority, it's very few, maybe one bus.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So we've seen a tremendous improvement with our buses.
And thank you for that. I'm writing this down, and I'm gonna put quotations around it. Being the chairman of the ad hoc committee on transportation, I like the sound of, we've made tremendous improvements in busing. That said, this is a suggestion, obviously, continue to provide us that information, and if we can, that's what's gonna, good news sells. And so the more emphasis we can place on what we're getting right, the better. And I want to cheerlead for that as much as I can. And I think this board and this committee stands me in that endeavor, with me in that endeavor. But I am very interested in that continuous process improvement, because these processes are so fundamental, so rudimentary, but so important. And so we got to get them right. And I just thank you for the clear vision on that.
Yes, it's getting better. And the second question was about discipline. We feel that, you asked about code of conduct.
That's correct.
And so, we feel that it's working. Our fights are extremely down this year. Our discipline would be down, extremely down. The most we get a lot of discipline that ties us up, are implementing the IDs. Students, refusing to wear the IDs and class targets. We're working on streamlining that and trying to get a handle on that, but that's the bulk of what we're dealing with.
Sure.
And so we're proud of what we're seeing. Of course, it's not perfect, the code of conduct, but I was on the committee where we're making some adjustments with that, and, but we've seen, again, tremendous improvements with that compared to what we've had in the past.
Great. Well, keep up the good work.
So
Thank you.
we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
I see you speak of the partnership with all stakeholders. How are you utilizing the 501(c)(3)s in your community, or are you all using them or added, especially in the college and career readiness area?
So, to be very transparent, the 503C, folks that are in our community, that's like an untapped resource that we have not utilized, but we, certainly would love to know more information, receive more information on who those community people are, or that's something we can research to bring into the Lakewood community.
Madam Chair, may I comment on that? I think that is a phenomenal idea. Because we know that there is a disconnect between the family and many families, obviously, this is a general statement, but there's a disconnect between the priorities of education in some households and this district. We know that. I grew up in that sort of situation. And so that said, but we can't govern the home as a body. So how do we get into the community and line up and prioritize education where it's needed most? And I think that's an excellent point, are these community organizations that I don't even know if we're really utilizing in any meaningful way. You know, I love that idea. I think that we should pursue that in whatever way possible.
Anybody else? Thank you for the good news.
At this time, excuse me, at this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Dantzler to come forward to share some of the updates at R.E. Davis College Preparatory Academy.
Good morning, everyone. So welcome back to R.E. Davis, where we are continuing to get better together. I will bring you a few updates. Just as the Ms. Carnes said earlier when she was presenting to you, elementary and middle, we have a little different criteria that we use to look at data, and we do use MAP. So extensively, I'm going to talk about our MAP data for our students who in kindergarten through 8th grade take that MAP test 3 times a year. So I'm about to share with you some of the, and I'll try to use this, winter data that we have. Let's see. I don't think I can get it. All right, so our goals, okay, our goals when I was with you was to strengthen Tier 1 instruction. That was one of the things that we were focusing on. So what you see in front of you is data that I pulled from NWEA MAP, and this is our math overall for our entire school and our reading for our overall for our school. So this is all those students. You can see we had 334 take the math during the winter, and then we had 320. So what you're seeing is you see 2 bar graphs there. The one on the top is showing growth. How much growth have we had from the fall to the winter test? And as you can see on the very left, in the little yellow, it says we're in the 46th percentile. So what that means is with all the schools, all the in our nation who take MAP, we're compared to all those schools, and we ranged in the 46th percentile, which for us puts us at in a good place, because we were 50%, you want to be 50 or 55, but we were at 46. So we know that our students are growing in the area of math. Now, when we look at achievement, this is where my team, when we looked at achievement, we said, okay, we saw that we were in the 23rd percentile, which is lower, but of course we know that's where we're performing based on the data that we have. So when we look at the winter test, we fell a point to the 22nd. You can see the bar graph there. We're still about 47% of our students, the 47th percentile, are still in the red, which means we're not met. We still have about, in the winter, we had 22% that were falling between 21 and 40. And then you can see the blue. Of course, we want to be green and blue. So that's what I tell the teachers. We want to see more green and more blue. But in the area of math for achievement, when we just look at our students being on level, we do know that we have some challenges there. In the area of reading, as you can see for the winter, we were only in the 29th percentile. And so we looked at this data and saw that we fell in achievement from the 30th to the 26th. And so immediately when we got our winter data, we realized we needed to make some changes. We had to make some changes instructionally. So the next slide, Ms. Scott. This is another way that MAP presents that data. But this is what Ms. Carnes was sharing with you earlier. This is the proficiency. So this pie graph that you see here is showing me how many of my students are projected when we took that winter test, how many are projected to be meet and exceeds. This one is for a principal is a powerful graph because you can kind of gauge really quickly, okay, this is where we are. And you can see in math it was showing about 54% of our students were still does not meet. And then we had 44, I think it's 44, I can't see, 46 were does not meet in the area of reading. And so again, as a principal, this was valuable data to me because I knew we needed to make some shifts. We had to do some changing. Of course, I want more in the green and the blue. And I will just tell you, when Ms. Carnes was explaining the added value target, the MAT, the ABT, I've heard that presentation 3 times, and every time I hear it, I get confused. So I can't focus on that. I don't focus on that. I focus on growth, and I focus on looking at the achievement and using this data in the NWA because we take it 3 times a year, so it gives me good, strong data about where we are. Not only that, what we love about MAP is it also gives us those bands, those what areas our children are not performing well. It breaks it all the way down. So you were asking, how do we know? That's because I can see in reading what are my weak strands in reading. I can see in math what are my weak strands in math, and we can target specifically the grade level, we can target the class, we can target the student who needs that support. So that's why MAP has been such a powerful tool for us, and I've had extensive training in my experiences with MAP. So next slide. So after I got our winter, when we got our winter data, when I left you the last time, we said that we were going to work on deconstructing standards, collaborating with our teachers, and working on vertical planning. That were the first 3. So you can see I've added 4 through 7 since I've been with you. And so the first thing when I looked at that winter data, we decided as a leadership team, we had to tier our level of support for our teachers. And what this means is almost like how we tier our students. I had to, with our transformation coach and our instructional coaches and the other admin, we put our teachers in tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. A tier 1 teacher was a teacher whose data showed they were making growth and progress. They don't need as much coaching and support. Now, we observe all teachers, we go in all classrooms, but we allowed those teachers to do what they were doing because they were showing us in their data they're getting it right. So we provide that support as needed. Then we had tier 2 teachers. Tier 2 teachers are teachers that we noticed there was some areas of struggle, maybe in certain grade bands, certain content, certain areas, and so we provided support to those teachers. And then, of course, we had tier 3. Our tier 3 teachers were teachers that needed extensive help. Now, in this group, this could be a class that had a long-term sub. This could be a class where we had a teacher, like I spoke of earlier, that was an alternative pathway. They didn't go to school to be a teacher, but they have that content knowledge. They just need help with instructional strategies and teaching. This could also be just a teacher who's struggling. So we took a very intentional approach to getting in these classrooms and doing observations, analyzing that data as a team, providing feedback. So that has been a big, huge component of what we've done over the last couple of months. We've really worked to provide observation and feedback to our teachers, because it's great to get in there and do the observations, but if you don't give them the feedback and tell them the areas they need to grow in, and that's not helping. So our instructional coaches, our interventionists, and our administrators jumped in all hands on deck to model instructional strategies, and allow those teachers to observe and watch us and ask questions. We did have to make a change to our Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention model. Instead of doing, mainly those in that model is a lot of pull out, because you pull students out in small groups and one-on-one. We've continued to do that, but we added that component of push in. So now our interventionists push into the classroom so that they're in the environment. They get a group of students in the back of the classroom. They're working with a small group, and then the teacher has a small group, and then there's another small group. So you essentially create like a co-teacher model almost, and the teacher and the interventionist can work together, co-teach and work alongside of each other to provide those supports for our students. We have really got, and I said this the first time, we know at R.E. Davis we have a Tier 1 issue. And it's in our regular ed instruction that's given to our kids every day. So we decided at the winter point that we really needed to push in and provide support in the classroom. And then, of course, we added an after-school academy. We have a breakfast club for our third grade students in the morning. And we have really begun working a lot with our teachers on small group and interventions and how to assist and how to work with our students one-on-one and in small groups. The next slide, Miss. So what are our challenges? This is just, I love pictures because I believe pictures tell the story. So here's just a slide that shows you, I talked to you all the last time about my 30 for 30, and we got to do it, and I absolutely had a fabulous time. Actually went over 30 minutes. It was 30 for an hour, but it was a fabulous time with my scholars at R.E. Davis. You know, our kids are so insightful and very intuitive, and the things they shared with me in that session, of course they wanted better chicken at lunch, so I had to go to the cafeteria manager and talk about that. But they were, my older kids, my middle school kids were very honest about needing better teachers, needing better coaches. Miss Dantzler's, we want, you know, and so it was, I walked away emotional from that meeting that day with them, because they're very insightful. They know a lot. But we also, the collaboration, we have really had to work on our PLCs and our collaboration as teachers, because I believe that iron sharpens iron. So our teachers are learning from each other and growing from each other, and they're in an environment where they collaborate and they're working together. And then on that end, you see just pictures of my interventionist pushing in with the teachers. So there's 2 pictures of the teachers in the class, and then 2 pictures of the interventionists. They're all in the class. They're doing, you know, you're working with multiple kids in small groups. So next slide. Challenges that I have. Our next steps first. Review, reteach, and refocus on priority standards. We are right now, I've told my staff, and they've heard from me that it's okay for us to be the tortoise in this situation and not the hare. Because again, I've said it a couple of times, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so we do have changes that we have to make, and we have some transformation things we have to do, but we know that we have to practice using test-taking skills and strategies for prepare students for standardized testing. You are correct. Every student is different. We don't know what student we're going to have, but we've got to prepare them so that we can work on some of that test anxiety that students have. They have to be prepared. So who has to do that? The adults, the teachers, the staff. We've got to prepare them for testing. We've got to encourage them and motivate them and work on their stamina, because when you have to sit and take a test, I don't think many of us adults could do it. They sit. And I had a student working on map test, and she took 2.5 hours. Can you imagine 2.5 hours trying to read stories, answer questions? So it's tough. We're still working on increasing our rigor, deconstructing those standards, making sure our teachers understand those standards, collaborating. The vertical planning piece, we're continuing to do that and establish expectations and protocols for an effective testing environment. That has become a big push for me as a leader in our school. What does an effective testing environment look like? And making sure our students understand that. Not that I want testing to be what it's all about, but we have to, where I and the teachers, we're trying to teach our kids, this is the real world. You're going to take a test for your driver's license. You're going to take many different tests over your life, and they have to understand that, it is a part of life. It's not everything, but it is a part of it. And then, of course, we're getting ready for our second 30 for 30 with a new group of 30 students coming up. So I'm excited about that. And our challenges ahead, the low achievement and the lack of student motivation. When you have students that are performing low, they don't experience success a lot. And so we have to be creative as educators, as leaders in our building, to motivate them and to help them to believe that they can do it. The certified teachers in middle school, I'm still missing an English and a PE, but I'm excited because that is way better than where we were. And we have to work on MTSS, and I am proud to say Dr. Wright just talked about Dr. Harriet. She has really been a blessing for me as a leader and for our school, because she's working with us to strengthen our our MTSS in our school and make sure that our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and small group are effective for our students. We've got to increase the rigor. I talked about belief systems the last time. We're still working on that growth mindset for our staff. Observations and feedback for teachers. We are going through lots of professional development as leaders in our district. Dr. Wright, Dr. McLeod, they are doing a great job of just showing us different ways to coach and support teachers and support our teams in our schools. And of course, high expectations, effective protocols and systems, and classroom management. So I could kind of answer your question already before it comes, Mr. Zell. Yes, the code of conduct is working for us, and it's working really well because we've used it to fidelity. But of course, it's culture and climate. So you've got to, as much as we follow that code of conduct, you've also got to have relationships with your students, and our teachers have to have relationships with students to make it effective. Yes, questions for me?
I tell you what, you were taking so many words out of my mouth, I didn't know what to say. Vertical alignment, you hit them all. Stamina. I used to make the kids write for long periods of time the old-fashioned way, and you develop that stamina for it. And you're talking about how they're going to have tests their whole life. Bar exam, and it's multi-day, and it's all day. Medical exams. Yeah, that's the way it is. Thank you. Oh, and that vertical alignment. Have y'all ever considered letting the teacher move with those kids? They said they're very, very successful, second grade, and you know you're going to be tested in third grade, and maybe letting that teacher move with them if everything's going so well?
Yes, ma'am. So it's definitely, as we prepare to end our year, those are the talks that we're having. I did that in my previous school where I was principalship in the first go-round, and vertical, allowing teachers to move with kids, yes, has a lot of benefits.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question, I'm sure. So buses,
Not a problem.
okay, good. Well,
It's
I'm
really
glad.
not for us at all.
Would you say that tremendous improvement has been made?
Well, and again, like I shared with you in the first meeting, it hasn't been a problem for R.E. Davis. I
Okay.
have to be quiet with that because I don't
Sure.
want to jinx anything.
No, I
But
understand.
we don't have any issues, so it's still going well. We do our spreadsheet and
Sure.
keep up with everything.
Okay.
But it's not a problem for Davis.
Excellent. And if you don't mind, could you clarify what NWEA means?
So NWEA is, and I might have to get Christine to help me, but that's MAP, that assessment that Dr. McLeod, do you remember what NWEA stands for? Northwestern Educational
I wasn't
Association.
even close. I'm predicting that. Wow, that is something. Okay. Northwestern, okay, thank you very much.
And
Appreciate it.
Dr. Span, I did want to comment because I heard the question asked. I agree with you about the 501c3, and we are currently planning a faith-based meeting with our faith-based leaders at my school to meet with them because there are many faith-based partners near R.E. Davis out in that area. So I have a meeting in the works now where we're going to be meeting with those, the men and women of several of the churches and working to partner with them. And I've also just last Thursday had a meeting with the Eastern Alumni Association. So yes, ma'am. And I had the AKA, a representative from the AKA sorority at the school yesterday. So yes, ma'am.
A plus?
Thank you. And at this time, our final school presentation, Cherryvale Elementary School. Principal is Ms. Healy. If you'll go ahead and start.
Thank you for being here.
No problem. Good morning again. I'm going to take this chance to go over our updated data from the winter. Oops, I went that far. But first I want to talk about an article that was in the item in which it was said that another school, which was Cherryvale, didn't seem logical to him that the fourth graders with non-certified teachers performed better on SC Ready in English, math, and science than their counterparts with a certified teacher. Mr. Palumbo was likely referring to one fourth grade class that we had that did have a long-term sub most of that year. But that long-term sub did not teach any tested classes. We supported that with our leadership team, our interventionists. We didn't have an instructional coach at the time. But our interventionists went in and taught the ELA and taught the math and taught the science. We even went for a little while where the other teachers, certified teachers on the grade level, kind of rotated through and made sure that we were giving all of the fourth graders
That's an
instruction.
example of data that does not tell the whole picture.
Right, right.
And I'll be glad, I'll make a copy of this, and I'll make sure he sees it.
Thank you.
And he wasn't mean, I mean, I asked the same question,
Right.
but that's an example of data
Mm-hmm.
may be telling another story.
Exactly.
Madam Chair, may I add to that? So I think failed to recognize is not an accurate statement. I'm going to defend him here. That was data that was never presented. So if it was presented in a way that was understandable to us, then of course he probably would have never asked the question. But I don't think he failed to recognize anything.
No, what the problem was, it was data on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no explanation.
Right, just our test scores in
Yeah,
general.
there it was.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So for ELA, you can see I did each grade level. Now, our kindergarten doesn't take ELA the first in the fall. They don't take MAP in the fall because they do KRA, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. So each of our grade levels have come up. The blue is the fall average score, and the yellow is the winter. Except for our fifth grade, which went down just slightly. And that was our ELA growth. Now for math, we've seen the same, similar. Our kindergarten in math is really doing well. If I were to look at the graph that Ms. Dancer had with the achievement, they're 73rd percentile for growth for kindergarten math. So our kindergarten is really, really doing some great things. I met with our school improvement council yesterday, and I shared with them that maybe that's the hope. You know, the rest of the grades have all come through the COVID era, and you know, these babies are fresh and new, and they're doing very well. But every grade level for math saw some growth. Some were greater than others, but every grade level showed growth. This talks about the growth targets that Ms. Carnes talked to and Ms. Dancer referenced as well. And it looked at the percentage of students who met their MAP growth targets. So yellow is math this time, blue is reading. Most of our grade levels have above average growth in math, except for that second grade and fifth grade. Most of them are above average. Average would be 50th percentile. So most of them half of our students made growth.
I don't hate to stop you.
No problem.
You know, a fifth grade student has to know all of the standards for fifth grade,
Yes,
fourth
ma'am.
grade, third, 2, 1. And isn't it harder? Because maybe they didn't have a teacher last year.
Right.
You know, so they've got to they've got to learn all of these standards. So to me, it's harder the older you get.
Right. Because it's comprehensive,
That
so.
may explain
Mm-hmm.
the slower growth. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, in second grade, I do know that that is one of the grade levels that we have 2 in-path teachers. They're not completely certified. So we have supported them a lot, and we've noticed the need to support them a lot. So I do know that's why second grade is a little lower. And so at the winter, when we had our data, our MAP data for the winter, we analyzed that data, of course, and we made some adjustments to our intervention schedules. So what we did, well, before we adjusted those, we did analyze the intervention data that we had up to that point. And it showed us that, the way intervention is set up, they're serving a small number of students, but they were seeing some growth. So we looked at just our intervention students, and we looked at the growth, and all 3 of our interventionists grew greater than 60% of the students they served. The problem is it just serves such a small number, and we have so many in need. So like R.E. Davis, we did start some push-in intervention, which gives you some coaching time, some co-teaching time, some just accountability for what's happening when you've got another person in the classroom there. So we did do that. We also, because we have 1 reading interventionist and 2 math interventionists, our math across the board is making better gains than our ELA. So we shifted the intervention schedules, and we looked at, okay, I can make some availability here, who's teaching reading at this time, and push them in at that point. So, our leadership team, our interventionists, our coach, they're our expert teachers. And we want them in the classroom, and we want them working with our teachers as much as we can. So we did make that adjustment as well.
What's
We-
FEV tutoring service?
FEV is an online tutoring service that you pay them, and each student is assigned a tutor, not just a different face that pops up every day, but the same person every day. And we share our MAP scores with them. So we've talked a lot about MAP today, where it tells you not just that the child is weak in math or weak in reading. It shows you that, they're okay with vocabulary, but it's comprehension that's hanging them up. And they have access to that data. And they work with students for half-hour to 45-minute sessions via the computer. There's a teacher in there, or sometimes it's a monitor in there. But it's online coaching, online tutoring, 1-to-1.
How do you get these kids to stay after school?
We just sent parent information, and we were unable to get a bus, but anybody who could transport their child and was interested, and we just left it at that. So anybody who could transport and wanted their student in it was able to get in it. I've also added, I get to it a little later, it's on there too. The one fifth grade class that I have this year without a fully certified, she's a permanent sub, I'm able to put FEV in the 2 math classes she teaches, so twice a week. So it doesn't completely take the place, but twice a week they get on with an FEV tutor as well. And then number 3 is we work with SREB, Southern Regional Education Board, and their consultant has come several times this year and done a bunch of different things. Done some modeling for our teachers, some co-teaching, but most recently we had him sit with our instructional team and just analyze our data, dig deeper. What did we miss? What don't we see? And we've identified additional groups of students that our interventionists can focus on for this last shift. He actually sat with them and looked at each child's weaknesses, and they came up with bare bones of plans to use with these students to get them that extra push right before the testing. So we've utilized that as well.
You have a larger student population, don't you?
I have about 470. Yeah. Some challenges that I anticipate is Title I funding for next year is going to be considerably less. Our projections are a good bit less. And of course, we use that to supplement some of the items that our students come to us without. I do have 2 positions, a 2nd grade and a 3rd grade, that in the leadership transition, weren't on Title I, thought we were in general fund, but they actually weren't. So they're funded until the end of this year, but then I won't have them. So I'll have 1 less class in 2nd and 1 less class in 3rd, which will give me larger class sizes than I have now. And in our work this year, we've found that, and Ms. Dancer talked a lot about it as well, a Tier 1 issue. So we have 9 teachers on our staff that are permanent subs, so they're not fully certified. Many of them are great, but they do need a lot of support and they do need a lot of help. So before we can really zero in on the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 interventions, we have to make sure our base, our Tier 1, the everyday, day-to-day classroom instruction is strong. So we're going to definitely focus on that for next year. And my reading coach is new to our school and new to being a reading coach. So finding her some support is going to be critical for us moving forward. And as I finish, I just wanted to bring up these 2 items. Equality is when each individual or group of people has the same resources or opportunities. So it focuses on everybody starting with the same. But equity is recognizing that each person or group has different circumstances, and you allocate the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So it focuses more on the outcome. And the last bit of data that I looked at was the kindergarten readiness assessment, which is what our state uses to determine if how ready boys and girls are when they enter school. And there's only 2 schools in our district that have less than 10% of their kids come ready, and Cherryvale is one. We have only 2.6% of our students that come prepared for kindergarten. And like I said, there's only 1 other school that's there with us. So then I give you this picture, equality, they all start out with the same box, but they want the apple at the same level. Equity, different people need a different size box. So we need to decide if we're going to focus on giving every school the same resources at the beginning, which is equality, or giving each school the resources they need to have equal outcomes, because it's going to take more.
Don't we have a preschool program
Yes, ma'am.
in our, are we just not getting those children in preschool?
Ours are full. We have 2 pre-K classes, and they are capped at 20, and they're full all year, but that's just 40 students.
kindergarten? How many students do you have for kindergarten?
This year, we have about 70.
Okay, if you have 70, why aren't they in preschool?
It's not required.
Are we beating the bush to try to encourage that? We put flyers
Yes.
out?
Yeah, we have flyers. They go out every year. We put on our website. It's, yeah.
Oh, I don't know, but it seems like it should be higher.
Mm-hmm.
Would that help?
Right. I think so. I think so because our kindergarten teachers spend a good time of the year just teaching routine and structure because we're getting babies, straight from the house into the school. They don't just even know the basics. Some of ours haven't been to a daycare setting or anything. They just come straight to school.
No fine motor skills developed?
Mm-mm.
Can I just add to on that
Please.
note, as early childhood
Please.
also falls under my department.
Sure.
So this is probably a good segue to discuss maybe in the future what that department is doing because they haven't had to address those concerns. As a matter of fact, this year we started the process of that department led by Ms. Creole Ray, and she collaborates with Dr. Newton DeBond. They actually started going to daycare centers to start working collaboratively with them. So yes, there is work to be done in our early childhood program, and we can elaborate on that later.
Sounds good.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have some questions.
Please do.
Okay, so can we back up a few slides? It says
Sure.
that you have a vacancy, what appears to be a vacancy in math. I think it was one of these ones.
Here, I'll get out of the way.
Okay, it says begin using first of all, how is FEV tutoring paid for?
Title I.
Title I? Okay, and so that's, I think that's a good use of it personally, but, okay, thank you for that. And then it says that you don't have a certified math teacher? Is that accurate?
She's a permanent sub.
Okay, so, well, the reason I ask is while you're presenting, our last personnel report, and I'm not going to speak anything specific, Madam Chair Lady. According to this, Cherryville Elementary has a music and an art teacher shortage vacancies. It doesn't specify certified math teacher anywhere
And
on
that's
this.
because that person is a district employee, I'm guessing?
So I guess my question is, who's right? Is it this report that I'm looking at right now, or is it this? And I think that's something that we need to know the answer to.
Oh, she's not certified. She's a permanent sub.
Okay, so, well, all right, well, so you're telling me that we have a certified teacher shortage, math teacher shortage, correct?
There's a permanent sub in that position.
So yes. Okay. All right, well, this report doesn't marry up with that. So this isn't your issue, this is, I think, the district's, but I would like to pursue that at some other point. I don't want to spend too much time here. Secondarily, the bus situation, are you having any issues with the buses? Are they improving? Or do we have any
haven't had a problem
persistently
this
late?
year.
Okay, great. Code of conduct?
Going well.
Okay, okay, and with fidelity, thank you for that term. With fidelity is the key to this. And then the last couple slides, you mentioned, you used 2 slides to describe and define what equity and equality is. What is the purpose for you doing that?
I just feel that for my school, I can speak for my school, to be an excellent school or be a good school, it's going to take more resources
Sure.
than another school that comes, that gets students that are more ready based
Sure.
on their experience.
Do you feel that we're not doing that? Is there, I mean, because what I'm seeing here is, when I look at, and I don't mean to cut you off, let me just give you a bit more context of why I'm asking. When we look at the distribution of funding, and this funding doesn't necessarily tell us resources entirely, right? Because there's programs,
Right.
processes, people. But it's when we talk about per student funding or per student expenditure in each school, it appears to me, and I can't off the cuff tell you where Cherryville lands in this, but Cherryville is, according to the state report card, is receiving around $11,500 per student. that's certainly not the lowest in the district. And certainly not the highest either.
Right.
So that said, you know, if there is a, and I don't necessarily, I'm not going to get, you know, philosophical on this, but to me, it's not necessarily a quality or equity issue. It's a organizational management issue, and it appears to me that the district is attempting and have been very, very forthright and open. And correct me if I'm wrong. I know you won't right here because we'll be telling on people, but it appears that the distribution of funding and not necessarily resources entirely is being considered, but based on the data that I'm seeing. So I take pause in those slides because, do you feel like you're not getting what you need to perform at the level that we're asking you to perform at?
To be an excellent school,
Sure.
I don't think I can do it with the staffing that I have at the
Okay.
school.
All right. So I just want to make sure that.
My thought of it, you know, we operate on if you have X amount of students at an elementary school, there's 2 counselors, there's 2 assistant principals, you know, and we don't have the numbers to need that. I have just 1 counselor, 1 assistant principal.
Okay.
But we also have many special ed classes, so that assistant principal spends a lot of time in IEP meetings, dealing with discipline, and.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like the not necessarily the problem, but the challenges are far deeper than just a distribution of
numbers.
dollars. Okay. But what I want to get at, and I want to make this point, and I think that this is certainly not. I mean, sure, feedback from principals, and administrators to the district, to the board matters. I think there's personally, and I'm just going to say this statement real quick, and I'll be quiet, is we have an abundance of real estate, and we have a declining student population. And this board and committee's going to have to get real serious about looking. No one likes the word consolidation, but guess what? We're in the business of being financially responsible with the taxpayers' money. So that said, we need to get real serious about making sure that those resources are effectively utilized. And if we have, you know, schools that are just, you know, persistently underutilized, well, that stretches resources further than we have access to. So what I'm saying is, I think some of the bigger, larger problems that exist in this district is because, and I'm not saying anybody in this particular room, but I'm saying in the past, we haven't done what we were supposed to do as far as, you know, taking the consolidation efforts of the 2 districts and actually balancing out. And so we have schools that are just costing this district hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to maintain the electricity and the maintenance without a single student in it. So anyway, I'm saying, I think if we spend our efforts looking at the finite resources that we have, how we distribute them across the district, and then getting our district right-sized, to use Dr. Wright's lack of trademarked statement there, I think we can answer some of those questions that you have with this. So what I'm hoping to hear from our principals is a big yell from you all to this board, or rather the district, because I know there's a hierarchy, is to say we need longer-term projected solutions, not just these short-term solutions. So that's my statement. I hope that we can talk that out, and I think that that's a requirement because this district has a long history of sort of whistling past the grave on some of those bigger issues. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to say that.
And I'd like to make put one thing on record. Cherryvale absorbed all of the Delane students. Now, did the teachers go with those students to Cherryvale?
I was not there. Yes, Dr. McLeod is seeing.
Okay.
They did, they followed the
Right.
students.
So that increased the population a good deal, at least by 100 students. But you also received, you know, the challenges of making sure those students were learning too.
Right.
Well, we appreciate what you have brought us.
Thank you.
And we are behind you. Never, ever get discouraged. We want to support you. We want that position for a math teacher to be put in your school. And I applaud the long-term sub. Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to the next
Ma-
portion.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
while we're,
please.
while we're transitioning, let me just say, on behalf of myself, now that I am more aware of what's going on, Ms. Healy and I will talk, and we'll figure out how to best serve the children at Cherryville, as well as we do with all the other 27 schools. So we don't want anyone to feel like they're left on an island to try to do this amazing work. So we'll have those discussions and figure out how we can better support what's going on there. Tremendous job being done out there, and so we'll get it all figured out and try to get better, whatever that means.
Okay, at this time, our last presentation is from the Office of Student Support Services, and since there's quite a few of them, we're asking that they fill in, so they'll be at least one microphone.
Yes, I brought my army.
Please do.
Good morning, Ms. Disney, our chair,
Good morning.
our superintendent, Dr. Wright, and all committee members. I'm Veron Davis, the Executive Director of Student Support Services. Today, the Office of Special Services will be presenting some data trends for the students with disabilities, how the Office of Special Services have responded to the data and provided the supports throughout the district. And then also, we will share with you our plans for continuous improvements. At this time, we're going to start with introductions from the Special Services Leadership Team.
Yes, it needs to be green.
Oh, it cuts on, okay. I'm Angela McLeod, I'm the lead speech language pathologist for the district. I also just throw this in there, supervise OTPTs.
Would you mind speaking in the microphone? I listen to the live stream sometime. If you're not close to it, you can't hear.
Just pull it right
Just
up.
pull it right up
Yeah.
there. Okay, I'm Angela McLeod, I'm the lead speech language pathologist for the school district, and I also supervise OTs and PTs. That's occupational therapists and physical therapists.
Good morning, I'm Tara Cunningham Canty. I'm the compliance specialist.
I'm Joni Somerset. I'm the secondary special education coordinator. And I'm Laura McAllister, lead school psychologist.
Good morning, I'm Maria Newton-Taban, elementary special programs administrator.
I'm going to start with some key reminders to provide us with our roadmap for today. I want everyone to keep in mind that all students are general education students first. That is something that is also emphasized from the State Department. And why we say that is because students with disabilities are afforded the same rights as all students in the district who are considered general education students. And that also means they have equal access to curriculum resources. And then we provide those students with the supplemental supports to support their progress. Every student can learn, just not on the same day or in the same way. Special Education 101, I want to emphasize so that everyone understands that special education is a service. It is not a placement, and defining service means when you look at the individual needs of that student, then you as a team, not you, but the team decides how are we going to serve that student so they can receive the direct supplemental support to help them progress with their education, and primarily most students are served in the general education setting. We want to make sure that the teams know that when you discuss service, that service delivery model may look different with each student, and in most cases it really does look different.
Okay. This slide just shows our child count, not child find, that over the past 3 years. And as you can see, it looks at district enrollment as well as students with disabilities. Our special education numbers reflect students ages 3 through 21. And as you can see, there's been a slight increase in the percentage of students with disabilities based on these counts over the last 3 years, even with some of the enrollment decline.
Okay, we want to tell you a little bit about who our students with disabilities are. And so, go ahead, down to the next one. We can't switch it on ours. Okay, so students with disabilities, we have 13 categories. When we go to the next slide, you can see the categories that contain our students with disabilities. If you can go up one, yeah, there you go, thank you. And so we want you guys, we want to be able to tell you a little bit more about each disability. So within each of those disabilities, you have a wide range of levels of students. So you may have students that just maybe need a little bit of support. You may have students that are severe and profound to where they need the maximum support. And of course, the goal for special education is always to educate the children in the least restrictive environment that they are successful in. And again, so taking for consideration students with autism disorder, you may have students that may just need supplemental support in the areas, maybe of communication and maybe of reading. Or you may have a student, on the autism spectrum scale that may have significant profound needs. And so what we look at for all of these disabilities is everyone is tested. All students participate in state assessments, including all of these students. So you may have a student with blind visual impairment that may need Braille. You may have a student who may need, let's say, multiple testing days for accommodation. So we do make accommodations for state testing for these students, but we want to keep in mind the variety of needs for these students and the varying levels. So you can see as well, approximately 1% of the special ed population is severe and profound or even moderate disabilities, to where they would participate in the South Carolina alternate assessment. And those students receive instruction based on extended standards. So still the same standards, just it's the most essential standards for that grade level and more to their cognitive or ability functioning level. And that could be with any disability, not just intellectual disabilities. So again, that's not but around 1% of the population. Within those disabilities, we do have students who may, for instance, maybe they're not successful in the regular education ELA class or the regular education math class. Maybe, their cognitive deficits are so severe that they need a special education ELA class, a special education math class. When you think of students in that range at the high school level, we have students that may not be able to have the ability to be on a high school diploma track. So they may, but they are still required to take the EOCs. They still require to take an alternate EOC if they're in that South Carolina alternate participation eligibility range. So again, all of our students, even if they need the accommodations, are still required to participate in the state testing as well as the district assessments as well.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. Is that all the disorder or all the categories, or is just some? Okay.
13 in the state of South Carolina.
Good
This
deal.
is our
Thank you very
13
much.
categories. All right, so the next slide, we just wanted to let you know the percent of students with disabilities that are in the tested grades for each school. And so this is based off of, so this is an exact, we calculated these numbers based on the child count. So on October, I think it's like the third Monday or Tuesday every October, they do a count. And so this was just calculated on the enrollment for the district on that day and the percent of, and the kids in each grade level that were students with disabilities on that day. But for testing, the kids that are included are the students that are enrolled on the 45th day and the 160th day continuously.
So this isn't 100% accurate of the percentage for each school. So that's for the elementary school. And the next slide is the percentage for the middle schools. Great. And then that third slide is in the high schools. And so I know Ms. Healy mentioned that she has a lot of special ed students in her school. And so there are several programs, as Ms. Somerset was saying, the students that have those significant cognitive abilities, that there's not as many students in the district that are classified that way. And so to be able to serve them and give them the and allocate our resources that we're using them wisely, not every school has that. So the schools that do have those classes, those percentages go up a little bit in those schools because of that specialized class that we need there. All right, and then you asked us to kind of look at, you can keep going, the trend of the data over the past few years. And so this is the percent of students with disabilities that scored in either the met or exceeding range on math or ELA, and I believe that's the when they do the indicator for achievement for the report cards, it's the that it's this particular metric that's used for that. So for elementary, you can see that so the brown in the middle is the year after COVID. So in elementary schools, pretty much all of the schools dropped significantly there, and then they increased after that for most of the schools in elementary schools. And the elementary schools that are not listed, they did not have a subgroup. They didn't have enough students identified as having a disability to make, so there were less than 20 at that school, and so they weren't included.
And just for clarification, is that the marker, less than 20?
Yes.
Okay.
To make a subgroup, right?
Yes, that's for any subgroup. They have to have at least 20, and for elementary schools, it has to be within the grades 3 through 5.
Okay, and then the next slide's middle school, and so everybody, middle school didn't follow the same pattern as elementary. I think middle schools are middle schools, and they're always different, so we get different results there. And so this slide has the numbers on it. I didn't put on the other ones. Just to kind of clarify, I didn't, so like Chestnut Oaks and Ebenezer, they didn't have a bar that showed up on theirs. That was, on that particular test, that group, they took the test, they just didn't have any that scored in that range. And then high school, obviously there's a big difference from the 18 and 19. That was the year, I think two things when we go into 21 is they switched the EOC from English 1 to English 2, and then also that was after COVID as well. So that's the difference with that. And then the last slide is the graduation rate for the high schools for students with disabilities. And just another reference point here, the state graduation rate for students with disability is about 58%. Just if you'd like to kind of compare where we are compared to across the state, the students with disabilities.
Now, don't some of the students with disabilities get to go to school until they're 21, I
Yes,
think?
yes. Right, so they
And
can,
that's still considered on time?
No, it's not, but all students with a disability are entitled to attend until they're
So-
21.
So if they don't graduate at 18 or whatever, it is considered a minus?
Yes, yes. So those are different systems in place that,
But we allow them to continue.
because legally they can.
right, and they can continue, they're eligible for special education services until they earn a high school diploma or they exit due to their age. And so if once they've earned a high school diploma, they're no longer eligible as a student with a disability, and they wouldn't need to come to school. And then students that haven't earned a diploma, they can continue to come until they're 21. But for the report card, it's based on when during that time period that's specified for everybody.
So, just to clarify, so it will affect the on-time graduation rates?
Correct.
But it is useful, and it sounds to me like it's important to maintain, allow those students that extra time. It doesn't make sense to me, though, why it would
But you
affect
won't
it.
get credit for
Yeah,
it.
yes,
I
and
mean,
not,
if-
you're right, and not to beat a dead horse, but that is something that is unique to our state. Another pin to put on
Well, I would
that is
love to talk to
unique to our state.
Yeah.
And
I would
can
love to
speak-
elevate
And I can
that
speak to
to the
that,
state, please.
especially being from another state or working for another state for 20 years. So I can speak to
But that
that.
could be corrected through legislative actions, couldn't it?
Yes, it could.
Uh,
And I've actually personally spoke to be able to serve on some of those committees to help advocate for that. I'm still waiting, but I would love to be a part of that process.
Well, I would absolutely love to help you in that endeavor. If you let me make some noise on that and will line up with me, I'll happily
Yeah, I think we
push
could
that.
make some noise.
And I can just make a point to where most of the students that stayed through their 21st birthday are students with significant cognitive needs, that are learning life skills and things like that. Most of the students that are on the high school diploma track, they're not there till they're 21. You know, you may have a couple, maybe once a year or so, every other year, but the majority of that percentage for the students that stay through their 21st birthday
Sure.
are taking the alternate standards, the extended standards.
It seems like it's punitive,
It does. It doesn't make sense. If the idea is to educate the child,
to help the child.
then why would it, that's a question. I just have one clarifying question, ma'am. So the clarifying question would be, do we have, and you may not have it now, but I'm very interested in knowing what the percentage of that student body, reaches that 21st birthday, and then, if it's a significant number, then that's something, I mean, we need to, I guess, address right off the bat.
Right, because it counts against us.
Yeah, so I would love to get that number if we could dig that up. Thank you.
But I think when you speak to that issue, then you have to speak to the other issues in special education.
Sure.
And that is that you're not identifying all your students in pre-K or elementary school. You're not educating all of your students. So there will be some backlash to it.
Good point. And I think, just starting the conversation, I think is the big push, right? We have so many rocks we got to turn over, but this is a new one to me. I wasn't tracking it at all. But it's, I think, something definitely worthy of conversation, for sure.
Okay, now that we have all this data, what are we doing with it? Not only are we accountable to our district, the state is holding us accountable as well to look and see how we're going to use this data to improve our outcomes. So these are some things that we have to do at the state level. However, I want you to know that we are meeting our compliance factors, but we still have some areas in our academic that need some improvement. So the Office of Special Education Services provides the district with an annual LEA determination profile. And from there, we look at Sumter School District, and you'll see on the next slide, but when we get there, we'll talk about where we are. But we have been identified as a Tier 2, which means we need assistance for the 21-22 school year. And then the LE Determination Data Analysis Report, which is called a LEADER, was completed to identify the areas of need. And you'll see what we did on the next slide to, as we analyzed our data, to develop and create our action plan that you'll hear more about in the future. Now,
Did you define, did you tell us LEA? I might have missed it.
it's a local educational agency, which just means Sumter School
Yeah.
District. I'm sorry. Now,
LEA is the acronym that describes each individual school district for non-label, for non-layman. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
And that is for special education particularly, not?
no,
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
anyone, in anything general education, they'll say LEA.
Okay.
And so when they say that, we know it's Sumter School District, since we're here.
All
If
right.
it's another district, yeah.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay. Here you can see our areas of need for the 2021 school year and the 21-22 school year. The state will soon release data for the 22-23 school year, and we'll be able to see if we made any significant changes or improvements. We'll look at our areas, see what our new areas of concerns will be, and then we'll begin to use that data to develop an action plan. And we receive points each year for different things, for improving the year from year to year, for meeting target scores and meeting state average, you'll receive a point. So if you just kind of look at that's our, we identified 2 areas, or the areas that we needed to work on, and we looked at, for academics, in particular with our school level, look at 4th grade ELA and 4th grade math, 8th grade math, and 8th grade ELA, and then we'll talk about the graduation rate and career readiness.
Those state averages are pretty high.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason there's such a discrepancy?
And when we get our determination profile, they do change from year to year. So this particular, that was for the 21-22, that was the target and the state average. And then when we receive the one for this year, it may be a little different. So I'm not sure how the state comes up with their targets. But that's, and it may change from year to year. All right, next slide, please. All right, so basically, what's the special Office of Special Services? What's our focus? So to specifically target our children, our focus is on supporting and providing teachers with the instructional resources and the supports that they need to help them with the planning and executing that specialized instruction. So that's what special education is that specialized instruction that students need to make progress in the general education setting. And so the next slide, please. All right, so we look at the district report card. We do an analysis of our areas of need. We also take the state, because we are accountable to the state as well, so we take that data that they send us, and so we look at what have we been doing, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do. So we have across the board through, because we serve kids 3 through 21, so we look at what's the curriculum, what are the instructional strategies that's been used, what do we need to do to make improvements in those areas. And so Dr. Canty had talked about the quality improvement plan. So part of a state requirement when we get our determination profile, we develop goals. And just as we develop IEP goals, our quality improvement plan, we call it a QUIP. A QUIP has goals as well. And so we look at over a 3-year, we do the goals for over a 3-year time frame. And one of the largest areas that we look at was the graduation rate. And of course, we see that in the general education, in the school report cards as well. But with our students with disabilities, that graduation rate needs to be worked on. It is a big area of concern. And again, that goes back to kind of what we were talking about before about those students that do stay to their 21st, or that maybe they take a little longer to get the diploma. If it's not within the mandated time frame for them to earn that does go against us as well. So we look at building up our graduation and also improving our dropout rate. And things how we help that, we've developed a teacher support schedule. So that's specifically what we've been working on this year, is really targeting giving one-on-one instruction for new teachers, schools with a lot of vacancies for special ed. So doing support schedules for those areas. Of course, conducting the classroom visits and observations to see where the areas of need. So we may see that there's needs in one school and different needs at another school. So we've done those observations, and then of course we have done our research and provided the curriculum and instructional resources. So in addition to what's being provided in the general education curriculum, looking at what instructional resources that we need to provide our teachers, and also, of course, providing ongoing professional development for those areas. We did look, of course, with the state assessments, what do our students do? Are they receiving the appropriate accommodations? Are they receiving the appropriate assistive technology they need to access the general ed curriculum to be able to participate in the test? So we look at all those factors as well. And then the TASC, which is the Transition Alliance of South Carolina, when we did our improvement plan, we included part of what we were going to do was develop a high school graduation team. And we started with one high school, and for right now it's Sumter High School. And we worked with OSIS, which is the Office of Special Services at the state level, and TASC, and met with them monthly with our Sumter High graduation team. And what that graduation team, what the point of the graduation, the goal of the graduation team was to develop an early warning system. And members of the team went to state trainings past 2 years to work on that and work with other districts. So the early warning system is geared towards looking at our students with special needs, looking at where's the breakdown, why are they not, working, why is our graduation rate not improving, why is our dropout rate increasing? So that warning system looks at, from day one, we're going to look at attendance, we're going to look at the behavior referrals. So we look at the areas that may be impacting in their progress and try to intervene within our student with disability population. And so that's been working really well. We hope that after this year, we're going to establish that in the other 2 high schools. And members of the graduation team, special ed teachers, counselors, career specialists, assistant principals, gen ed teachers. So we bring in, and of course we bring in voc rehab counselors, so we have, the team consists of a variety of different areas. And so, and the state has helped us a lot with that, and TASC especially. There were 4 members of the team, the grad team, that just went to a conference in Columbia with TASC to work specifically on improving that early warning system. So they have made a lot of progress there. So part of that, our state accountability as well as accountability for our district, is to work on those graduation rates and, of course, raise the academic scores for students in the areas of ELA and math.
Could I ask you, most of the students in these categories have a IEP, isn't that correct?
They all have an IEP.
All right, they all have to have the individualized
Education
plan.
program.
Yeah.
And each IEP is tailored for the specific needs of the student. So an IEP isn't developed based on a disability. It's what does the student need? What services does the student need? So you may have students that may only need speech and language therapy. They may just have an IEP for speech therapy. They may have an IEP to where more than 80% of their day is in a special education setting, with special education services. So it's a continuum of services, a variety of services. We have students with IEPs. Maybe they're in a classroom. Maybe they just need co-teaching, so especially teachers in the general education classroom with the teacher. Then we do have ones that maybe they're pulled out for one elective a day to get individualized services to work on those IEP goals, those individualized education goals, and that's based on what their needs are. So you may have a student that maybe their needs work on 3 different individualized goals, and you may have another student that needs 12. So it's a very wide range, but they all have IEPs.
To drag this out, that means when they're tested, they have to have their IEP needs.
Their accommodations.
Adopted to whatever it is.
Right.
For the test.
And so every IEP has what we call accommodations, and those are things that, what does the student require to access the general education setting? So say a student would need a small group setting to reduce distraction.
Yeah.
And so those would all be implemented into the assessment.
Except for if they were in 3rd grade taking the reading test, you cannot provide them with accommodations for 3rd grade reading, because it's testing their reading ability.
Unless they're blind, perhaps, but I guess.
No, oral administration.
Oral administration. You cannot, if they can have, or if you have, if accommodation says oral admin, not in third grade reading, they cannot have that.
That's interesting to know.
So that's gonna affect,
That's gonna
How
affect the
well-
statistics,
that's gonna affect how well they do if that's what they've been doing. If
right?
So that third grade test, the construct of that test is testing their ability to read. And once it switches over to the fourth grade, then it's testing comprehension.
That's the
Right,
difference.
yes.
Yes.
So that's why they
They
don't
can
read
read,
it.
they can read letters or words, may not know what they're reading.
Right, right. So,
I've got it.
yep.
Okay, so we're going to tell you a little bit more about what types of supports and things in addition to that, so I'll hand it over.
So we provide, excuse me, sound a little froggy. We provide supplemental support for our students. And so the curriculum that we provide, it supplements the general ed curriculum, okay? We keep saying that our students are gen ed students, and, excuse me.
It's allergy, I've got the
It
same
is,
thing.
it is. Thank you. And so we have been providing last couple of years, Max Scholar. And Max Scholar is, if you're familiar with Orton Gillingham, it supports the Orton Gillingham. It is a web-based program. However, the teacher will provide direct instruction. So it's not just the students on the computer, but there is direct instruction based on the assessments and what the student does. We have here Orton Gillingham Strategies, where we do have teachers that use those strategies. And I'm going to skip to Don Johnston, Snap and Read, and Don Johnston, co-writer, because those two are also part of Orton Gillingham program.
Avid is not on here. Would Avid help your kids, some of your kids?
I'm sure our resource students are involved in AVID, I would imagine. Mhm. So some of our students that are resource, yeah. Okay. All right, thank you for that. The N2Y, News to You, that is for our students that take the SC Alt, the alternate assessment. And so that's more for our moderate and severe disabilities of our students. I'm going to skip to letters. And our district has provided letters for our teachers. And a number of our special education teachers were involved in letters. And myself, along with the director of early childhood, were facilitators for letters. And that moves us right into Frog Street, which is the curriculum that our pre-K 3, 4, and 5-year-olds use. And it is the same curriculum that our Gen Ed pre-K 4 students use. And so Cheryl and I have been working closely together to make sure that our students, when they transition from the 3, 4, and 5-year-old program, that if and when they go to the Gen Ed, they will be familiar with the formatting of the curriculum. So it's been a great experience for the director of early childhood and I, because we also attend the state meetings together, and we're working very well together, observing classes, supporting teachers and principals, and again, we're excited about our collaboration. IXL, we use that, and Joni will share more about IXL as well for secondary, and some of these things we do use for elementary and secondary, some of these curriculum. And the last one, Gold Book, has been a great tool for our teachers to support them in making sure or ensuring that we have the right goals and objectives for our students. And Gold Book also provides support for our teachers throughout the year. They can do web-based workshops. All right, if you move to the next slide, we provide support, professional development, and training. And you will see there that whatever curriculum that we are using, we also provide that support for it as well. We sent our teachers to the Council of Exceptional Children Conference this year. Those teachers that attended will be providing a presentation next month at our lead teacher meeting. We had a presenter week before last to talk to us about autism spectrum disorder students that are identified with that. It was quite an eye-opener. We are seeing a number of students that are 3, 4, and 5 that are identified or have some trait of autism, and so it's been a little different for the teachers. I'm going to move over to social emotional learning. The zones of regulations is something, a platform that we've used, a training that we use with our teachers to assist our students in regulating their behavior. You know, they need to be able to identify, you know, why they're upset and why they are eloping or things of that nature. We've had positive behavior support. Last year, we brought in some people that supported us with student behavior, provided observations, provided strategies for our teachers, and now our teachers are using those strategies that have been taught to them with and also we have the registered behavior technician, which we call RBT. We have Milo Robot in 2 of our schools. If you haven't seen Milo, he helps our students regulate their emotions. He talks to them. His face is almost real. His little nose, and the children love to touch it, and also they learn from Milo. So that's been going very well. We have it at Wilder, and we also have one at Oakland. Functional.
Was
go
that
ahead.
purchased through Title I? No,
No,
just
ma'am.
had to get a belly up and buy it.
That's IDEA.
IDEA.
Mhm. All right, and the last 2, functional behavior assessments. Our staff often, the teachers, psychologists, it involves them, and if a teacher has some concerns about behavior, we go through the process of providing a functional behavior assessment where observations take place over time, different locations, and from there, a behavior intervention plan moves into play, and that is used to help the student to diminish some of the unwanted behaviors.
Okay, so as Dr. Newton said, a lot of these supports and curriculum, they do tie in from elementary to middle to high school. So I won't go over all of them that would be redundant, but just kind of focusing on some that are maybe important to go through. And again, just a reminder that this is in addition to what the teachers have available through the general education curriculum. But again, IXL, so IXL is provided to many of our teachers, and it is online. It works to scaffold those targeted skills and help students learn that personalized pathway for growth. And so that's focused in the areas of reading and math. And, you know, students, they like their little avatars. They really enjoy that. So IXL has been a good supplemental support, supplemental resource for our teachers and our students. So with the Voyager Language Lab and the Voyager VMath, and so a lot of these, or several of these curriculum, they are geared towards certain teachers or towards certain student needs. So for the Voyager Language Lab, we have that in place in several of our middle schools. Most actually of our middle schools have teachers implementing the Voyager Language Lab and VMath. We have it in both what we would call our supplemental services, so students that may be receiving special education services during an elective class. We also have that implemented in special education ELA, special education math classes. So if they're if the special education teacher is teaching that core content class, it's also implemented in those, as well as just the supplemental type settings. And we've seen over the years, we've seen a lot of improvement with the Language Lab and VMath. There are benchmark assessments. I know we keep talking about assessing our students and testing our students. This makes it a little bit more fun for our students to be tested, but at the beginning of the year, they do a benchmark assessment, and then for reading and math, and then 3 times a year there's one for writing, so we can see where they started out in the program as well as where they ended, and have seen a lot of growth within that curriculum for our students with disabilities. The Achieve 3000 Literacy and the Spider Learning Math, those are provided to our high school special education teachers who teach what we call essentials of English and essentials of math. That's in addition to the general education standards and curriculum that they're using. Those particular programs are aligned to the South Carolina High School Credential Standards, so the students who are on the employability credential track, not the high school diploma track, we supplement their curriculum with those. And what I really like about the Achieve 3000 and the Spider Learning Map, the representatives from the company, they come and do year-long trainings. So just this week, actually, a representative came, they go into the classroom, they make sure that the teachers have what they need, if they have any questions, so it's year-long training and support. And so even if, you know, a teacher may have a question and may not understand how to implement a certain unit in that particular pacing guide, they're able to jump on with a call with the representative, and then they also make visits to the school. So I feel like that's a good support for those, and we've really enjoyed, and the students have really enjoyed those two curriculum at the high school level. Of course, if Dr. Newton Bonhead State had already kind of go over the Orton Gillingham strategies in the goal book, we do provide the same for the middle and high school. And then the SIMS model for reading and writing, teachers have been trained on that model as well, and that's a really good, I think, instructional materials to help with the reading and the math. And so with the attainment and the N2Y, those both are supplemental and core curriculum for our students that participate in South Carolina alternate standards and extended standards. The N2Y, we provide them with, the unique learning system is their academic program with the lesson plans and the standards that they're working on, whereas positivity that's in that bundle, positivity, really works with the teachers and students to improve communication and behavior, so visual schedules, classroom management, and so that's something that we provide for students with our more significant needs, as well as, of course, the attainment is in line with the students with moderate and severe needs as well. Exact Path, that's not just for special education, that's general education, but our special education teachers do utilize that as well. And then with our employability credential students, we also offer them the Pathful Job Shadow, and that particular program really goes in depth for helping them with careers and transition type activities, and also earning those work-based learning hours. If we're not able to go out into the community, we have the ability to do the work-based learning hours through the virtual program, and they do a lot of college and career exploration through that program.
Okay, I'm seeing a disconnect. I know that South Carolina Ready is totally based upon our standards. I would be very surprised if all of these programs are totally aligned to our standards. They're probably aligned more to national standards.
We use our standards, so our teachers are required to use our state standards, and this information just supplements that. So
Okay,
they're
so
able.
The teacher, it's upon the teacher to take this material.
And we create pacing guides for them based on our standards as well. And so it's most of these, if not all of these, are, so for instance, IXL, that's just uniquely for the students. So that's extra practice. It's not core curriculum or standards that are taught. Those are, though IXL is used during an elective when they may be with their special education teacher to work on their individual IEP goals. Whereas they're in a general education for ELA, math, science, social studies, so they get the state standards. So for the smaller percentage that may not be in a general education ELA class, they may be on extended standards, then that program aligns our South Carolina extended standards with their pacing
I have
guides.
a greater admiration for those teachers because theirs is a little more difficult. They're having to take generic programs and make them align with our standards.
And again, a lot of those, they do make sure, you know, because I work with Spider and Achieve, it is our South Carolina standards.
Okay,
It's very adaptable and tailored towards what you need.
good.
I think that's why they're so great, because they tailor to us. Okay, so next slide is just, of course, the professional development. We do have the companies that come in throughout the year to ensure that our teachers know how to implement what we're providing. If they have any questions, if they get the initial training, but they also get that year-long support during our professional development. And I will hand it to our teachers, not saying that other teachers don't, but our special ed teachers do go above and beyond for our students, and they stay after school. So a lot of these professional development trainings that we do, we don't have that many professional development days. They have to stay after school, and they are more than willing to stay after school, to come in early, to work during their planning period. So for us to be able to provide our teachers with the training that they need, we have to find the time to do it. And so they are, and our principals are really great about letting us borrow them, when they have school level PD days, not just district level PD days. So it does take some creative thinking to be able to provide as much training as we want to provide for them. But I won't go through all of these, but we do have the Bureau of Education and Research Institute. They have come in past couple of years to provide specialized instruction training. That was just on our district PD day in January. They came in and worked with all the middle and high school students to really go through, it was a 6-hour PD, the high leverage practices to make sure that the type of specialized instruction they are providing is effective and is addressing the needs that need to be addressed. Of course, they've also come in and done training with our special ed paraprofessionals. Our paraprofessionals need that support just as much as our teachers do. A lot of the paraprofessionals are in settings where there are students with more significant needs and how to handle those behaviors. So we have collaborated with the Bear Institute for that. And of course, PBIS, they have come in as well and supported us through the past couple of years and provided trainings on things like functional behavior assessments, behavior intervention plans, intro to ABA. And then the next one, we continue for the professional. So like I mentioned earlier, TASK has done a lot of training with our teams. We would meet monthly with to help with that graduation and dropout prevention. And again, of course, with the high school graduation team early warning system, our QUIP plan, we've also trained the teachers on the goals for that as well to try to increase that graduation rate. And then the high school credential, our employability credential, that's for students that are not able to be on the high school diploma track. Those teachers that teach the essentials classes receive training. They receive training for the requirements for the work-based learning. That particular program requires 360 work-based learning hours. And also that program requires that students build a portfolio and create multimedia projects. So we provide training on and professional development in all of those areas. And last, but certainly not least, one of the most important, training on educational plans. So training, and this, and all of my colleagues can attest to how much training we put into training teachers how to write compliant IEPs, how to adequately assess the students' needs. So taking the most recent MAP scores and looking at those standards that, what are they getting ready to work on? What type of goal do we need to build from that? So lots of PDD training our teachers on how to develop appropriate goals, how to not only just develop a goal, but how are we going to implement it? How are you going to progress monitor it to make sure that that instruction is effective? And then you need to go back to the drawing board, and we need to come up with different goals, or we need to, say, amend those goals. And so lots of professional development all throughout the year, and this is one of the lots of the after-school trainings that our teachers are willing to stay for to make sure that they're providing their students with what they need.
So considering everything that we have done to work collaboratively with our schools, we will continue to follow our guiding principles for ongoing improvement. The needs of our school moving forward are essential, and we will continue to provide those continuous improvements. Academics is the foundation of our district, and that is why my team, but myself and Dr. McLeod in particular, have been discussing the collaboration with all stakeholders, because our students, the special needs students, must have access to the general ed curriculum and all the supplemental resources, but our teachers also have to be trained on that material. And that's why this year I was really insistent that the special education teachers at the elementary level will be a part of letters. Years past, they would have been on the island by themselves, but they have to know what the standards are. We have to start with the end in mind. If we want a student to graduate high school, the foundation has to be solid, and that is something that we have been working on. Also, we have discussed MTSS. MTSS is a problem-solving model, and we're a part of that process too, to solve problems and make sure we provide the support needed for students. We will also focus on incorporating our high-quality programs that's aligned with standards. We will make sure we continue to look at our data, the datum systems, and making sure that we look at assessments, formative, summative, look at our universal screening, our anecdotal observations to provide that continuous improvement, and also the school-based teams as well, being a part of that process to monitor progress, as Ms. Somerset said earlier, identifying interventions, and we look at the instructional practice needed. We would be remiss if we also don't look at some of the continuing factors that impact progress, and we've heard this consistently throughout the day. School attendance, families, start with families. As Mrs. Dell said, the family has to have value in students coming to school. The suspension rate data, although that is improving, students not being present does impact their progress. Participation, of course, another area that supervises mental health, but we have an increase with the number of students who are now experiencing mental health challenges. As a matter of fact, I was just at a conference last week, and I shared with my mental health coordinator and the coordinator of school counseling and MTSS, the statistic has now changed that 1 in 4 students have mental health challenges, and that's changed significantly over the year. It was 1 in 10, but it's now 1 in 4. And so we have to have those supports in place as well. Obviously, there's a teacher shortage, and we have an increase of virtual teachers. I can't say that that's the best solution, but that's what we have available to support us. In some pockets, we do have some virtual teachers who are knocking it out the park. To be honest, they are, but for the most part, it is a challenge being in an environment with a virtual teacher. And of course, the caseload numbers. As we move forward with the cycles of improvement, as I said earlier, we will continue to provide ongoing review and assessment. We'll focus on the plans to improve overall performance, implement those action plans that is expected of us from the state and also from our superintendent, the local level. We'll evaluate and improve efforts to be informed of next steps. All of our children are considered general education students first. I always emphasize that. And all educators, regardless of which students they are assigned to serve, have a collective responsibility to see that all children receive the education and supports they need to maximize their full potential. And also, finally, with moving forward, special education is not separate, and that's why we have been emphasizing the collaboration piece. All means all. All students are a part of this district, a part of each school, and they're not to be seen as a separate entity. Curriculum instruction for all students is the foundation, and continuous collaboration is essential for our growth as we move forward. This team is committed to the work. I've said to them that your work is not at the annex, your work is in the building, and my staff has been boots on the ground and in the building, and we meet every week at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. They're smiling, but we have a department meeting every week. we discuss what's going on, what do we need to monitor, what do we need to adjust, and sometimes it's our personal SEL time, to be honest, because we have that time together. But, you know, we are committed to our why, and moving forward, we keep that in mind. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I know that the very first thing we talked about today were, we have priority schools, CSI, you know, SCTSI, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I put an extra letter in there. But we know that those are, sometimes have subgroups. Now, my understanding is maybe our report card grade was hit hard by subgroups. Do the students we've just been talking about, do they sometimes fall into the subgroup area?
Absolutely, and that's why we have those action plans in place.
Okay.
And we have those plans in place also to support the schools with responding to the data that's impacting those subgroups. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's what this is about.
Yes.
then. That maybe next year, some of that may improve.
It may, if we don't have changes to how the calculations are done. All we can do is just remain steady and keep moving forward and keep our eyes on our why. And that's my expectation of this team. I know sometimes, as Mrs. Zell has said, even the data doesn't show the real story. I mean, I've looked at data a lot. I love data, and I see the growth in our students from individual schools. You know, Ari Davis spoke today. You know, just different schools and how the students have grown, but it still is not calculated at the rate that captures their true growth. I mean, if you have a student who's performing at a level 1 per se in layman's term, but at the end of the year they're at a level 3, that's huge growth. But they may need to be at a 5 to count towards what the school needs to, you know, but it's still growth.
All right, and I need to make sure I understand this. We had an elementary school that made an excellent, but had a subgroup that put it in a different category. Now, I just don't see how that can happen. Do we just need to concentrate on that subgroup? Maybe we weren't concentrated on it.
Well, the overall excellent, that's based on the overall weighting for the school. But when the state of South Carolina wants to make sure that all students are growing. So when you looked at the subgroup for that particular year, you've got to remember, that was 2022, and it puts them on a list for 3 years. They can't come off, even though they were not re-identified for the annual list, because they have put more focus to make sure that they are tracking all of their students. And so that group was not underperforming for that school for the 2023 testing, but they cannot come off that list until 2025.
And I think all 3 high schools had the same, but I'm just calling it a ding, I don't know what else to call it.
And with the high schools, it was even harder, just like you heard that Crestwood was not re-identified. They just did not exit because they missed one of the exit criteria. And the high schools, under the previous accountability model, they were being graded on assessments that freshmen took 4 years ago, or when they were a sophomore, they took one of the end-of-course tests. So it was very hard for the high schools to be able to do the exit requirements. And that is one of the positive changes for this new accountability model that's in place for this school year, that it'll be real-time end of year for the students that took those exams this year.
Okay, this is the honest, we want an honest answer here. Do we need more teachers in to work with, what, do we need more special needs teachers? A lot of these kids are in regular classrooms.
Yes, they are. We don't necessarily need additional positions. We just went through our budget cycle, and I did not request any additional teaching positions, but we do need qualified teachers to serve in those positions. And I don't know a number offhand, but we do have several virtual teachers in our special education classrooms who are serving our students. And, at one of our weekly department meetings, even Dr. Newton-Bond has said, several of our teachers are knocking it out the park. And if we had an entire department, then our students will definitely be holding their own as you compare them to the general ed students. Absolutely.
So your answer is probably yes?
Yes to more positions, not necessarily, I'm gonna be honest, we have the positions, we need the bodies, we need the qualified bodies.
Qualified.
I think we all can agree that we need more teachers in our schools, throughout the school. But there are a couple things I want to call your attention to that you have to leave. I stayed out of respect for the presenters because, of course, I'm a special educator. I have some problems, I have some issues, and we'll talk about those at another time. But I want to commend you all for being special educators for us. It's a hard job. It hasn't gotten any easier since I left the profession, and I think it's worse. I've talked with individuals at the State Department of Education, national level, and everything else, and we've sort of decreased what we were doing at the local level. But I want to call our attention to what I see happening in this district. And I would say to you that, yes, I have a niece that's special education, learning disabilities, and she was not served well in this district. So I want to put that on the table before the beginning, so nobody will say, when I leave, that I'm concerned about them, or her, or what have you. But I work in the community, and I have a lot of people who call and ask what to do about this or that. And I'm careful with that because I know that you're doing the job of a mammoth task. I know the job's there. But I've had so many calls on child fine that the district is not doing what they need to do to locate these children and to bring them into the fold at an early age. I've had concerns about IEPs not being addressed properly. Some of our teachers know how to do it and do it well, some of them don't. We've always had problems with behavior, and we will always have problems with it. And so we just have to keep doing the good job that we're doing for behavior interventions. But I think that overall, we need to work with our parents. And that is not a job or a task that we can actually say every district, all districts, and we're the worst or we're the best. We just need to work with our parents. They don't come to us with all the education and knowledge. And then on one end, we say parents aren't trying to work with our school district when they really are. But they get turned off immediately when we don't do what we say we're going to do. Not what we can, but what we say we're going to do. And I think that's what I'm hearing more of. School districts said that they're doing this, but they haven't done this, blah, blah, blah. I think that virtual teachers are great in some ways, and in some ways they hinder the student in general. But overall, I'm saying that my hat's off to you. Continue to do the great job that you're doing, but we need to be consistent, and we need to work with our parents and with our children. IEPs are hard to manage in a lot of ways, but we have to do that. And I think that if we do that, we'll have a consistent
Thank you. And if you could help us some more with the child fine, I'll just say that our data in January, we have a 30% increase of the number of students that we have found from January of last year. And so with that, we have been beating the ground, but if we're missing some, we definitely need to know about that, because we are going to be starting our 3-year-old programs at capacity next year.
We do
Because-
a great job with the actual finding of the child, but after we have found them, we don't do a good job in this district of identifying their needs. We don't test them. We just put them out there and they just waffle. So I think if we were doing a better job, I'm to be corrected. But I know that we haven't done that. And some parents can afford to take their children other places, and some parents can't. They're just stuck with the district that they were born in. And so we just have to do that.
Thank you for that, Dr. Span. Could you clarify, not providing, identifying their needs? You said we don't test them. Can you clarify that,
When
please?
children are identified, or when parents come to us and say, my child is having a problem, we don't necessarily test them right away, or some children haven't even been tested. And especially those children that are in private schools, they don't get tested. The child may not have a problem until the 3rd grade. They may do well in the 1st and 2nd grade, and then they start developing those problems in the 3rd grade. And we are aware of that. And so those children then have to be identified along with the initial. Every child that has a disability is automatically identified.
Correct.
Because there are disabilities that you can't see.
Correct.
And so those are the children that I think when we can see the disability, when we know the disability, we know the work. But when we can't see it and they develop it along the way, then we need to do a better job of identifying.
You're correct, and that should be captured in our MTSS problem-solving model that we have in place, that we still need to work on. But that will definitely be captured. You've hit the nail on the head with that. And that's why the coordinator has been diligently in the schools, making sure that the MTSS teams are actively making sure they're problem-solving students. And like we said, Tier 1 is the biggest factor in making sure we solve what's happening with instruction. And that's how you can respond to the needs of the students.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just have a couple things.
Sure, please.
Dr. Span, I think you hit the nail on the head with much of what you said, and that brings me my first question, would be, when we develop these behavioral interventions and these plans, are we including the families? Are they involved? Is it just
They're required members of the team.
Okay, so but what level? Is it just an acknowledgement, or do they have a part in it, like a role in it? And I'm not trying to get too in the weeds, but I think this is a key element, is essentially enlisting the family to to shoulder that load with us.
I think there's two goals. So there's a compliance part that parents are involved, so we are required to invite them to meetings. And then there's the other side of getting information from them to get to the root cause of
Development
problems.
plan,
So we do involve parents in like parent interviews. They do rating scales for us, so we get a picture of what the behavior looks like at home under those circumstances compared to school. And then now, probably not, and so I'm glad you asked that question, once we implement it, we really kind of focus on what we know we can control, which is what happens at school. And maybe not like different things that they could, I mean, we give them recommendations of things, how to approach behavior and deal with things at home, but maybe not so much a plan for them at home.
Okay.
So there's a compliant part that they have to be invited. And then we do get information from them during that evaluation process. And then they get then when we develop it, we have a follow-up meeting, and they're there and they get the information and that feedback as well.
All right, well, that's great. I appreciate that. And I think if however we can help you all do that, I think Dr. Span brings up another good point. And I'm going to reemphasize this because I said it earlier. We can't raise children from this entity. We can certainly help, and we can line up with these families and these parents, but there is a bureaucratic, technocratic sort of divide between us and them. We need a bridge. And what I'm thinking is these 501c3s that she mentioned, if we can, and I don't know what sort of legality that looks like, I don't have any clue, but I will tell you, there's a lot of folks in this community that want to help amplify what this district efforts are, and we know that home life is, I mean, y'all know it better than I do, it is probably one of the predominant factors in educating or the inability to educate a child, and particularly with those with social emotional issues. So anything that we can do, please consider that in your development of your plan and processes. As much, whatever we can do at a policy level or even at a political level. I want this, and I can't speak on behalf of the board. I can speak for myself, but I can be pretty influential sometimes. I want to help us focus on the right things. So that brings me to my next question. Y'all mentioned that we went from 1 in 10 to 1 in 4 disability children being. Is that correct?
With mental health.
Mental health. Okay.
That's
So,
mental health issues.
Okay.
That's all children.
okay.
All children.
So my question is, and I referred back to the 13 categories, and it looks like there's some pretty vague things in there. With that said, are we expecting an increase in IEPs and challenges, I guess, so to speak, lack of a better
As a
phrase?
result of that.
So will we see a greater need? I mean, it makes sense to me. I just want to
Well,
get your take.
we are already seeing it. Ms. Davis mentioned the increase in autism. So we're seeing almost every kid that we're getting through the early child find, the early ages, the ones
Okay.
that haven't been enrolled in school. I mean, we're testing 4 kids a week,
Really?
3-year-olds. And like Dr. Newbon said, every single one of them has got significant language and social
Really?
delays. And so in that category, we're seeing a tremendous
Sure.
increase
Okay.
in those.
So likely we will see a increase in IEP and associated resources and
And
needs.
so Joni and I, so she's also a school psych and just does a different job. But when we started in this profession and we did evaluations, and when we did, when a student was going to be identified as a student with a learning disability, it was probably one of the easiest evals we did. We just had to do a cognitive and an achievement and observation, and now every single eval we have has a mental health component to it, a
Okay,
behavioral
well, good.
component to
I'm
it,
glad to hear that.
which triples the
Sure.
amount of time to do the eval.
Sure.
And it's not, I mean, so, and it's, you can't do it in a day. It's over time, because you've got to look at the pattern of behaviors, you gotta look at the different settings.
Sure.
So it's way more complicated
Okay.
now.
Is
to
it
do that,
helpful
and
though?
then to help,
I
then
mean,
to come up
with
with a plan.
identification really being as Ms. Davis, as Ms. Davis stated, looking at the end goal should always be the focus of every effort, right? Like, what is our outcome? I think that was a very succinct way of putting it. That said, if we know that we're going to be walking into a greater need for those sort of resources and capturing, really categorizing our student body appropriately so they can get the resources and help that they need. How do you see this, and it's kind of a general question for all of you, how do you see this need growing and affecting this department and then widespread? And then my second question is more for Dr. Wright, and he does not have to answer this right now, is this. So I've gone over to a couple schools, and I'll make this quick because I know we're getting tired and we're past lunch, but I've gone to several schools that have sort of like, they are the predominant schools where they have greater, greater capacity, greater footprint in the special education realm. And I've talked to many of the folks over there, and they say Wilder being one of them, Kingsbury being another, and I may be crossing wires here, but yeah, I think just follow me and correct me where I'm wrong. That said, it seems like, and I don't know, it seems like that across the district, we have the sort of overall umbrella program, which y'all manage, but we have little individual programs in every school. Would it be more beneficial for us to, and I remember one of the statements in your slide, it says that we aren't to, our goal is to not segregate or separate. They are the part of the student body, and it needs to be inclusive as possible. However, there's also special needs that go into that, and we have finite resources. So my question here is, would it make sense to possibly, and I think you probably know what I'm asking, would it make sense for us to possibly consolidate efforts where we can, if we can? Is it even legal? Is it possible? Those are the things I think, and y'all might know the answers right now, but it seems to me that we have finite resources, and I think that if there's a benefit to put students of like category in the same room because they can get more, be more impactful with their administration of education, I think we should consider that. So I know it's a big fat question, but
It is a pendulum that has gone both ways
Sure.
over the years.
Okay.
And so I think right now we have, y'all correct me, we've got them grouped based on not necessarily their disability, but more on their functional needs. So if students have strong academic needs, we've kind of consolidated so that we can allocate that way.
Sure.
If they have those behavioral needs, how can we centralize those? So we've kind of got students, and it's real hard with the geographics of this district
Sure.
to do
Transportation.
that for transportation purposes. And it's a challenge in elementary compared to middle and high. You can have almost everything that you need at high school, where in an elementary school, you can't have everything, because you couldn't, there's no way you can have 13 different classes in every elementary school. And lots of those numbers, like 15% in some of the schools, it might be that only one of those kids, if everybody went to where they were actually zoned to go, to have like a teacher for one kid. And so we already kind of do have.
So you already do it.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is kind of in the middle. So we don't do it exclusively.
Sure.
But it, yes.
Well, I guess, I'm very glad to hear that, and so what I would like to offer, if there's any, like I said, any policy that we can focus on as a board, that it will untie your hands to some degree, please bring it up. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is getting those roadblocks out of your way. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with, this is on a good note. Okay, I would like to take a point of privilege just a moment, Madam Chair Lady. So if we're not aware, and I'm sure you all are, I met a young lady in special ed in the district at the dog park the other day, and I'm gonna give her a special, Miss Ricky, give her a special shout out. But she was before she knew who I was, she told me all about all the great things over at her school. And they're having on the 28th of this month, they're having a Special Olympics event, and I would like to just spread that word as much as we can, because inclusiveness absolutely
Which
matters.
school, so we know where to go.
I can get you that information,
Okay,
ma'am,
all right.
and then we can.
Wow.
And is that something that we can put?
No, it's the Special Olympics Center.
Is it across the district?
It's gonna be at a location because it involves
Yeah, multiple.
Okay.
kids across the district.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I would love to see that flashed across the Chiron of Sumter as much as we can. So anyway, great things. I just want to say thank you for all that.
Do y'all have enough volunteers to help with it?
We usually do, because I just want to say, and I know time is of the essence, but we do need to end on that positive note regarding our unified sports, and that is something that is a huge plus for this district. Many of you may or may not know, but we've had students who've actually qualified and competed at the national level and have earned gold medals. So just keep that in mind.
Dr. Wright, you have something?
Just very briefly, I want to thank everyone who presented today, and this helps get us closer to better serving our students. And I always try to remind us that all of this work that we do is about making us better as a school district and making sure that we do a better job each day of serving our students. So Thank you to all of you. As you all can see, working with students of different academic needs and levels is a complex thing. You know, there's not an exact science to this work. It was very interesting that I just heard the comment about how we best serve special needs students. And what I would tell you, because I can probably say it a little bit differently, in 26 years, that has been probably the most debated subject. You know, do you have specialized schools? Do you have, you know, do you immerse them in classroom environments? And I think the most prevalent answer is you got to do some of all of the above. You know, you can't just, because special needs itself requires individualism. So if we're serving students as we should, there is never an exact science that fits even students within the same spectrum. I have a nephew that is autistic. He's about 24, 25 years old now. But what worked for him is very different than his classmate, you know, because of the level of autism. So if you imagine just in that one spectrum, if we have to diversify instruction, how we deliver instruction, with the many, and I don't even want to go into all of them, but the many categories of students that we have that we serve with special needs, it is nowhere close to an exact science. And actually, we ought to be individualizing instruction for everyone, but that's a different subject for another day. But certainly, this work is ever changing, and as we heard earlier, I think Dr. Spann kind of alluded to this. This work that we've been doing has been going on for as long as we've identified and addressed special needs students, and it is an ever changing. And so the folks that dedicate themselves to that uniqueness of work certainly are to be commended. And in terms of Special Olympics, superintendent's a big supporter of Special Olympics. So just as soon as I get out of this meeting, I'm going to ask Ms. Scott to clear my schedule so I can be wherever it is to be a part of that. So that's something that I certainly love to see those dates for our children. I think that's all I've got right now, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. My goodness, we're almost overwhelmed with information. I think we needed that.
That was the intent.
That's the intent, right. And the only thing I have to do is get somebody to approve the consent agenda.
No objection.
There's nobody else here but me to say a second. And having done that, then we are closed. We are done. Thank you.